Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's check something here real quick. Okay. We have September 4th meeting minutes. Has anybody, have you had the chance to study? Do you have any questions about it?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Second motion.
All right. Call for vote. Aye. All right.
I'd just like to comment, the minutes are quite well done.
Yes. Thank you. First agenda item I'd like to do tonight, especially because we have a town administrator from Hardwick, New Braintree, as well as the building commissioner here, is the item I had requested to be on the agenda for the regional building commissioner policy, more regarding tracking time in each town, some communication protocols. Just to start with, the basis for this really was coming from Barry's point of view, not necessarily everything that I may or may not have heard from different towns. We originally based the agreement on estimated hours per town during a work week. And so I thought we should start tracking the actual hours spent in each town, so maybe we could start looking at like a rolling average once we start developing like a 1, 2, 3 year average, and say, okay, the rolling average maybe changes a certain town's average based on what we thought when we came into this. And so I thought that was the tracking time thing. It was more about, okay, where are we spending the time between you and your assistant, just to say, okay, are we spending more time in a town than we thought when we originally estimated? And there wasn't a real good way to do that unless we start tracking the time. I don't have any data to support that. So that's where I was that's where that came from, just so you know. Communication was a little bit town to town, because I did get some understanding that, and again, I only talked to a couple people. There's a lot of people in a lot of the towns, so I'm not taking this to say it isn't working. Communication that's working now. I'm not saying it isn't working, but it was brought up, so I thought we should discuss it as to whether each town understood when they thought someone might be in the office in their town, or where they might go in order to address something if they can't ever make those office hours. And how do we communicate that? Like if somebody goes to Hardwick and the office hours are on a Friday, but they go on a Wednesday because it's the only time they can go, is there a way for them to communicate a request that can be followed up while they're, that's all. Things like that is where I was coming from, just to explain it.
Totally get that, Matt, and that is something that, I think when the towns had all entered into the IMA, I think the IMA, to be honest about it, had a lot of holes and it didn't have a lot of input from the town administrators of each town. And your town administrators are the ones that deal with everything on a day-to-day basis, so there may have been a little more insight there. So that is something that we've experienced, New Braintree has experienced, and the IMA itself, when I had looked at that, I hadn't been privy to the meetings that had taken place to formulate the IMA. But after looking at that, it was pretty clear there's some holes in there. However, we understood that this was new to all the towns.
Yeah.
So similar to the senior center, we kind of have to go through it to identify any issues, what really works, what doesn't work. In the meantime, Andrew became your permanent town administrator, and one of the tasks that a new town administrator just naturally does is to look at all the agreements that are in place, to make sure that they totally understand them, know what's required, this, that, and the other. And as he was doing that, he looked at this IMA, we both talked about it, we've met on it several times, and we both concurred that there's a lot of holes. So there was an attached job description, there was some reporting, there's actually financial reporting in there that just hasn't happened for the other towns to see. There was a February 1st deadline for the budget to be prepared and reviewed by all the towns. That didn't happen. So there's a lot of things that I feel have fallen the wayside, and I think that you could agree with that. One of the things that I'm really, I have to tell you, adamant about is an agreement. You have to provide, we have to understand what it is we're really asking for, right? I think at this point we probably do. And that IMA and the job description and everything else that'll end up in place, whether it be policies, procedures, and all of that, in the end, that becomes the toolkit. The toolkit for your employees, but also the governing boards.
Yeah.
Right? So if we have something with holes in it, it's not gonna quite pan out so well. So something that we had talked about was, because it's also my understanding that IMA was actually a draft, kind of pulled together from an animal control, regional animal control.
I'm sure
which
that
is
might have
great to
used
pull
that
some
as the
language
basis
out of
for the
other
outline of how to
agreements
build
and
an agreement,
but I think that if you would allow us to work together and continue our work together, because in all actuality, I reached out to Franklin County offices of governance, and they have regional building inspection services. It's just that it's a company that provides those services, but they have a lot of tracking and different things that maybe we could pull from. So there's some stuff out there, our thought really was to be able to bring something together, take an inventory of what you and your board are looking for, Hardwick, New Braintree, and Petersham, kind of pull that together and really revamp the IMA, and then give it back to you in draft form and let you review that and give comment, tear it apart, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also at the same time, work with Brianna, so she's really clear about what the communities need as a part of this, and to be able to discuss issues such as maybe zoning enforcement, and how do we make sure that that's happening, and how do we know that you know,
Yeah.
different things like that. And so that's what I'm here for tonight, is to just put that out there and let you know that we were aware that there's some stuff in the other towns are too. We just wanna make it successful. And I feel that whoever sits in that position as the building inspector or commissioner, they really need the tools to be successful in a regional position, you know.
Okay. No, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate you taking the time to come out to voice
Yeah,
that.
I know, I'm so sorry. Little worked up on
It's
a
for you.
motorcycle
Yeah,
accident
yeah.
Saturday, so.
So, yeah.
But I
so-
felt it was important, and that you know, you understand where the other towns are coming from too.
No, and I appreciate that, I really do. And I pretty much agree with everything you laid out there. I just thought this was also a good time for us to kind of explain some of the things that we might want that you guys start looking into drafting. So that was another part of this, was to kind of lay it out, this is where the board stands, and then you can move forward with developing a draft policy or the
Incorporated.
agreement.
Mhm.
Each town's gonna have to develop their own policies to figure out how to uphold that agreement. You know, there's a difference, and you understand that. The agreement is much more broad stroke, and then internally, you gotta figure out how you're gonna develop your policies to meet that agreement. And so for us, I just kind of mentioned the two things that were on my mind that I think we need to work on improving, that either we don't have in our current policy, or we didn't well define in the agreement. And so that was important to me. It was also important that we make sure the agreement does serve all the towns, not just Barry.
Sure.
But we've got to make sure that it's
Serving Barry as well.
right. So it was both. So that's where I was coming from. And I just wanted to make sure we had a chance to talk about it, because I thought the tracking of the time was going to be something. If we started now, at least as we get into budget season next year, we have a better idea of what did we do, where have we been, what does it really look like to spread for this year. Not necessarily consistently over the years, because we all know building goes up and down in towns, and it can fluctuate. And that's why I was thinking more the rolling average. You can get 3 years of data, you can start saying, okay,
Right.
and then start working with that. But I don't know if you guys have anything else you more in line with the intermunicipal agreement that you think you might want the town administrators to consider and Brianna to consider when they're sitting down and discussing the policies and the thoughts and what should or shouldn't be in there?
I don't have any particular point of view on it right now.
Okay.
As far as the data, I keep all my calendars in a Google Calendar, and I shared that with Andrew today, so the data all exists. It's just a matter of how you want that reported to you.
Yeah, and I had mentioned to Andrew, what I'm really looking at is the average hours spent in each town a week. I don't necessarily need to break down, I spent 2 hours on Tuesday from 2 to 4, you know. I don't need to get that detailed. I'm just trying to say, if we can say, all right, generally, this is the average, and at the end of the year, 52 weeks, we average this many hours a week in such a town and this town. It starts to develop that, and that's really what I was looking for. You know, I didn't need to know where were you Wednesday at 9 in the morning. I mean, that's not what I was at. Not saying that you're trying to hide it. I'm just trying to say that the question sometimes may have been misunderstood, because that really wasn't what I was looking for. I was trying to look at, okay, where is this office spending its time, because there's multiple towns involved, and we've got to figure out how much time we're spending where. And that was really the only thing coming from me on that. Communication was just something that sometimes you just got to revisit, you know, every once in a while and say, okay, what's going on? Is it working? Is it not working? Is there a better way to do it? And so that's why I chose those two topics. For me, in regards to the intermunicipal agreement, you may also want to look at, and Brianna can tell you because I can't, is it more difficult dealing with the electrical and plumbing inspector of 5 different towns, 4 different towns, and then the commissioner's just one, so she's now got to track literally 4 offices and communications and protocols and who to call and when to call, versus just having one centralized office that deals with even the interdisciplinary inspections.
Right, and you know.
And that was a miss, I think we didn't quite fill in the gaps in the original agreement.
You know, I had questioned the logistics of it, because that's one of the key components, you have to understand the logistics. So one of the questions that I had offered, I don't know that it really made it here, was, you know, will Berry be the central hub? Will all phone calls be to one centralized location? Will there be one cell phone instead of juggling multiple and multiple? So if Brianna's coming into Hardwick, let's say Friday, for 2 hours in the office, she's gonna have voicemails that are sitting there. There may be inspections that were needed on Thursday. Now we're holding a contractor up. That's an issue, because for a contractor, time is money.
Yeah,
And I get that, I really do.
and she has time restraints to
So-
respond to
I
those
actually
requests,
think it works
right?
better with the regional agreement because people are able to reach me wherever
I
am.
gotcha.
There's 4 different ways that they can reach me, so I think it's actually working better in terms of the contractors getting there.
I don't know if we have it on the website, but I think
My cell
that
phone is
needs
up
to be
there.
all identified. So, but there's different
right.
logistics to kind of figure out, and then what does that mean in terms of, you know, staffing or anything else, you know?
Exactly.
But yeah, that's definitely, whether it would be centralized or not, and obviously the files have to be kept in their respective towns and, you know, that type of thing. So there's some stuff to sit down and work out.
So, all right. No, and I agree with that, and I definitely agree that Brianna and the town administrators better understand the day-to-day ins and outs, details of all of those little nuances that just come into
At
the.
the same time, we understand that it's the boards that have the final say, so we'll present
Yeah.
everything to you and,
Okay,
boards.
I appreciate that. I don't have anything more to say on it. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, my name is Stephen Boudreau. I'm the administrative coordinator from Peter Sam, and I had communicated my thoughts to Andrew after he queried me with an email. I wasn't planning to be here tonight, but I was free to do that, so for the record, I'm here. Things are working well in Peter Sam. I was there when the original IMA was drafted and presented to the boards and saw all your signatures on there, and so this is the initial run-through of it. From Peter Sam's point of view, and I'm the main man there in Peter Sam, because we're short-staffed, or we are staffed as we are
Yeah.
there, and so everything comes through my office, and, you know, whenever somebody needs the building inspector, the regional building inspector, they come to my office. If she's not there, I get them in contact with her, so there's a good flow of communications there. We don't do as much in terms of inspections as you other towns do, but the regional agreement is working well.
Okay.
Again, I was there when it was originally drafted and put into place, and it is working well. I don't think that, quite frankly, that we need to rewrite the whole thing, but we probably could tweak it. And a meeting with the town administrators, and the building inspector might be able to offer something back, and then when it comes time to redo it, you know, we can redo it, but I think it's working well.
All right.
As far as I'm concerned, in terms of Peter Sam's point of view, I don't know about the other towns, but I'm concerned about getting a bang for the buck in Peter Sam, and we are getting that. And so
Okay.
we're very happy with the way the arrangement is in place now.
All right. No, I appreciate
report.
that. Thank you. And I'm not saying we're even near ready for it, but I do know that Hubbardson was interested in potentially looking, because they're at a point where they're about to move on, or they just moved on from their commissioner, and so they're looking to fill a role and thought. But I also know Andrew mentioned when that discussion occurred that he wasn't sure we'd be ready to bring in another town. All I had asked is, when we build the agreement, we think of the possibility if another town comes in, how do we make sure that that's identified, what the procedure is to bring another town in, and how we would, so just keep that in mind as a possibility, because maybe by the time you have a draft ready and we look at it and say, you know, it actually still can make sense, because we built it to grow with, not necessarily just to be locked in.
Sure.
So I would just ask you to keep that in mind as you think about it. But do you have anything to add, or?
No, I think Teresa said it all. Looking forward to working with them to really revamp or provide some comment to the IMA and some operational procedures, and hopefully get this up and running real well.
All right. Nobody has any further comment? We'll move on from that and let you guys start
Thank you.
getting to
Thank
your
you.
stuff. So thank you again for coming out. I'm sorry that, but I do really appreciate you making it. And you too, Mr. Boudreau.
Oh,
Thank you.
The drive was brutal, coming up from Stephen Road.
It's, it's all uphill.
If that's true.
It's rough.
I will write again, you bet, you bet. You bet. Just Sam's not gonna,
Unless you want it.
thank you so much.
Chief, would you be interested in your police department K-9 program?
What I wanted to do tonight was to just give you the sheet, the cost sheet, which is, couldn't have been completed until we got the grants approved, should you decide to accept them. And I wanted to just give you an opportunity to look these over before the next meeting, and ask that at the next meeting I be able to present. There have been people in town who've shown some interest, and said they've had some questions. So I'd like you to take these, look at them for the next couple of weeks, and then I can present the whole program for your consideration and give people who want to ask questions a chance to do so.
Okay.
And one thing I'll add is at the bottom of that, it says that there's no price next to the Canine Runner Home. I did get that price from Jason, and there's money above the grant money, the $22,000, there's another $1,500 available to us to cover that, so it really is it's still a zero cost item.
Okay.
So,
The officer replacement, what's that mean?
what happens is, they'll give you up to $1,000 a week to cover the overtime cost of replacing the officer. The program I wanna use is 6 weeks, but if we can't raise enough money to send him to the out-of-state 6-week training program, we have to send him in-state, which is about 24 weeks. They'll cover, about 18,000, so it doesn't match the amount of overtime, hence wanting to use a 6-week program, so we're not out that much more money. But, so the 6,000 would cover 6 weeks of training at the school that I would prefer to use. If not, we go to a school in, I believe, Boston, so, and that would be 17 weeks, and some time off, and then 6 more weeks for narcotics. You get a good portion of that, but not all of it.
Okay.
You have a couple of things, cruiser cage, cruiser equipment.
So, right,
What type of cruiser we getting for $27,000?
that's a Dodge Charger.
Is it police rated?
Oh, yeah, it's a good price, so.
Yeah, it seems low for a police rated vehicle.
Well, that's what we paid roughly for our last one, actually, less, that we got from Salvador, using
Okay.
their service vehicle pricing. It's a substantial discount that comes from.
So I imagine the 12,000 cruiser equipment is for light sirens and everything else.
Exactly, exactly, all the stuff that goes in there.
Okay. So that comes to that average 40,000 we say it takes for purchasing a vehicle and outfitting it.
Correct. Right.
Okay.
Things you might see that are low, they're like food, but we have a vet in Hubbardston that would sponsor us and can get us special law enforcement price on food, so
Okay.
that's rather low.
Waterproof boots?
Yeah.
Do not the police officers already get
Well, they're waterproof.
1,700 plus in uniform allowance a year.
Yeah, they do. When you go to a K-9 officer, you've gotta give them an extra set of stuff because they're going to be trips into the woods and things like that, so you give them an extra couple of uniform shirts and pants. Everybody else doesn't have that same demand, and the boots that they wear for tracking are a good bit more expensive than what they would normally wear. I mean, some guys spend that, but most don't for absolute waterproof boots. But that's all, the grant allows for all of that and covers all of that, so it's a
It's
one-time purchase.
just making up the difference, which is primarily the cruiser.
Right. All that one-time purchase of uniform stuff is covered under the grant, so it's not so much a cost to the town, because it won't cover the cost of the car, so it will cover all that other stuff.
Would this cruiser be in lieu of, or the
Yes.
same as the annual cruiser we've been talking about?
If we could raise the money for a cruiser, then we wouldn't ask for a cruiser, because we wouldn't want, first of all, we wouldn't start buying a bunch of cruisers in 1 year anyway, because
Right.
they'll all wear out at the same time, but yes, it would be in lieu of.
Okay.
We talked about this a while ago and understood the grant would quite possibly pay for the dog and the training and things.
Yes.
And the concern I had then and still have now is what's the continued expense and anticipated annual expense needed in the budget for this, and where is that supposed to
Right,
come from?
so this is the setup cost, and if you guys will allow me, at the 2 weeks from now, I'll do a PowerPoint that'll break down all of the extra costs, because there are extra costs, training and things like that. But I'd like to give that in a PowerPoint, because you're right, and I have.
Right, that's my objection has not changed, in the fact that I don't think we really need a dog. Grant and getting it for pretty much free is a good deal, but, how do we justify incurring expense for it with our budget the way it is, when we really don't need to be adding things? The potential, of course, is that we have, earmarked, obviously, money, 3% from sale of marijuana if that facility does get up and running, which needs to be used towards the things, and a dog that could be used for drugs could certainly go towards that, and that may be a way to fund it. So we need to know what those expenses are, recurring expenses, and see how we can offset it against that, because I think we're gonna struggle to find good uses for that money, because it has to be used for something drug related, so, or need related because of the facility. But keep that in mind when you come up with the expenses, there should be an avenue where it comes from. But we do need to see where it is and what it's gonna be.
Sure, absolutely.
The other thing I would just want to make sure is clear that currently with the waterproof boots at $300, that wouldn't change the current rules in the union agreement, so they wouldn't get that annually.
No, the idea.
Outside of being able to replace it annually under their current allowance, we'd have to negotiate a change in that, in the agreement.
Right, and the way I've seen it in the past is usually there's a funding source outside of, there's usually groups that, or maybe somebody in town that will do fundraisers towards the program. And when you have those types of miscellaneous expenses, if you're going to have them, it usually comes out of there, because
Right,
the
as
union
long-
contract is pretty specific, and we're not asking to add.
Okay. It was more just so that we wouldn't inadvertently give whatever
Yeah.
officer becomes it the thought that, oh, and you'll get this every year,
Right.
until it does or doesn't make it into the agreement.
Right.
That's more, I just
Yeah.
didn't want to misrepresent.
Right, and I have no intention of asking for something.
Okay. Nice though. I'm just doing a quick little math here for my own edification. What appears to be more the annual numbers here came to just under $6,000 of things that I think might kind of repeat themselves closely. Not it, but I mean, if you take from pretty much the cruiser down, if you don't count the cruiser and you go down, those are close to, I know one's 3 years of food, so I'm just saying 6,000, and if you take that and you take out
Well, I wanna be careful.
1,600 from that, then it's even less,
When you
so we're
price
getting
out
closer to
these
4,000 or something based on that.
When you're pricing out the expenses, things like a cruiser cage, the cruiser's gonna be replaced every, hopefully, 5 years, for 4 years, that means the cage will be swapped over at a cost or replaced at a cost, so that'll have a portion of that annually.
The idea of starting a guy in a brand new cruiser is, a dog's life is an average of 8 years. One guy stays with one cruiser. You should be able to get start to finish and not have to switch it, not incur that expense.
We're not getting 8 years out of our cruisers with the mileage we do, and I don't expect to. Unless if we set this aside.
We don't want to, but we've been
No,
doing it.
What I'm saying, if we set this aside as just for canine, then it really is an additional cruiser, not in lieu of one of our purchases.
Well, we would still only have 6 vehicles in our fleet, which is what we have now, and differences would be you wouldn't put it on details or anything like that.
Okay.
But that's
We
my
do some of
concern,
the running
it's my
time
concern
sitting
for
there.
overusing the remaining vehicles, so I mean, I'd rather see it a dedicated vehicle if it's gonna sit for 8 years, and it will last 8 years. But once again, there should be substantial funds from, the other agreement for the 3% of gross, which I want these numbers to be realistic, not conservative.
Right.
Because that, we may need to replace that, we may need to replace a cage and amortize some sort of cost, break that down over so many years. The life expectancy of the cage or of the cruiser, or, we're gonna have the officer 8 years, we have to train another officer midway through, so we may need to retrain somebody. And if the expectancy of the dog usefulness is 8 years, and we're talking about replacing that 8 years from now, if we are, we need to put, 11% aside or 12% aside, well, a 1/4% aside per year towards those expenses for a new dog and training again. So I wanna really be comprehensive, so when we come down with this, we roll forward, we don't get down the road 6 years and say, oh geez, we need 20,000 to train another dog again or something, and we haven't prepared for it. So I really wanna, when you give us that, include everything. I don't wanna, be like a certain building we had built and be $211,000 short
Right.
from the guaranteed price that we came with,
But, do you have any other questions?
Nope.
Any questions from the public?
Just that Mr. O'Sullivan speak up a little more, we can't hear him back here.
Okay. They can't hear you well.
So I'll be back in 2 weeks with as many answers to this question, all the answers to
I
this
said,
question.
just err on the high side, think of things that may go bad, maybe talk to people who have dogs and see what kind of expenses they're finding. I'd rather see more in there than less in there, and let, if this does get pushed through and it comes back short, it's gonna bite us all in the tush later.
Right.
And we don't need that.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Transfer Station Study Committee. I believe the rest of the board members are aware, possibly from email, but I don't know, because you just mentioned some email difficulty, that we had a third person submit, not so much an application, but like more of a resume background and an
That's
interest
why
to be
I
a
scanned
part.
the packet.
Okay.
I can't open my stuff on my tablet, it won't open the documents on my tablet, so I can't read it.
Okay.
I get emails, but not the documents, and I can't get anything on my phone right now, because I changed phones, and it, for some reason, it doesn't get permission to sign it, so.
Okay.
Visit the IT one of these days.
Yeah.
So,
So 2 of the 3 applicants are here, Michael Blanchard and John Chase, so.
if the two of you would like to step up, that'd be great. We now have officially 3 applicants. I do think it would be worth the board considering getting this committee started, but we can listen and,
Take the hot seat.
yeah, that's, go ahead, John.
Sit in front of you?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
I would prefer it. You're tall enough, most people can't see past you now, and I'm hidden.
Never hidden.
Never hit.
So from my point of view, I think the charge was pretty well drafted. We need to gather information to figure out the viability of whether it's something we should insource, or is there another way we might modify the actual RFQ, RFP that we have out, so that in the future, it either can help create better control of costs for the town members using it, or potentially actually create a revenue for the town. And we need to review that. One last thing I just wanted to mention, because I hadn't sent it out, and part of that was, it's the Worcester County Selectmen's Association, so I'm not sure how open that is to non-selectmen. But this Thursday, they have a meeting in Leicester, and they actually have an article specifically about municipal recycling programs. So I was gonna go there and, gather whatever I can, as well as contact information. I believe I also, last week when we were at the, QEMP meeting, and Gobi was there, and she mentioned that DEP has a lot of data and studies they've already done on some of this stuff, so you might be able to gather some of their information to read first before you go and try to find the information. It might save you some time. So I just wanted to put that out there just so that you're aware of, and whatever information I can gather, I'll make sure to get to Andrew to distribute to all of you. I'm not 100% sure. I think I do, but I'm not 100% sure if I have all your contact info. So I'll make sure I get it to him, pass it around, and but from my opinion, what I would like to do is the 3 applicants, one we would have to vote on if we're okay with Kathy Inman, John Chase, and
Michael Blanchard.
Michael Blanchard. Thank you. Now that I've said it, it'll start sinking in. So would we have a motion on that, or just to appoint the 3 of them, or do it individually?
I'd have a
Okay, either.
motion to appoint our 3 current candidate applicants to the
Okay.
committee, and to leave the committee open for more applicants still, so I'd like to
Yeah.
still keep the invitation going, but
Yeah.
as I said last time, I'd like to move forward. Any work someone can do on it is good.
Okay.
No second.
I'll call for a vote for that. Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
All right, so you all 3 have been appointed. Next steps really would be the 3 of you getting together, so maybe Andrew can send an email out to the 3. Get your first meeting in, identify kind of your roles, clerk, chairman.
I need a copy of the charge in writing, should be nice.
Yes, please make sure each of them get a copy of it. Some people might not appreciate it, but I do get a little stickler on some of the items in the charge, so if you think you're deviating from it, just come to the board and say, we'd like to do this. We don't mind, it's just, we like to be informed as where you're going and why you think you would want to do something outside the charge. I don't think this is a crazy charge in that regard, it's really just collect data and do your best to present as much information as you can to help us all make good decisions. The other thing that I've been talking about, and I continue to still get somewhat of a positive response from Hardwick, possibly Oakham, and even New Braintree, is reviewing the concept of whether we revise the bylaw that opens up the use of the transfer station to other towns. And it doesn't have to be limited to just those towns, but we could revise that bylaw based on certain towns or towns that abut Barry, so we don't go statewide. Right now, my understanding is we're only at about 20% capacity of the transfer station based on DEP's limits they give us, which means we have plenty of room to bring more people in if they're interested in buying permits and participating just like every other resident in Barry. That increases revenue, it gives us a chance to potentially reduce permit fees or other on-site fees that might come with bulk waste or reducing trash bag costs, whatever. That'll be something that I think we would have to figure out when you start collecting the data, to figure out where it really matters to save, or it actually don't save right away, invest in capital, improve it, and then once you got a good routine going, we can start bringing some costs down. But I would just, for me, I'm just open to you guys trying to gather that data, work it, focus on each of your own strengths, see what you can do to bring that together, and then get us the information. And I'm fine if all 3 of you don't agree. Feel free to make sure you speak all sides of what you guys are saying. It doesn't have to be one voice from your committee saying this is what we recommend. You can have an assenting, a dissenting opinion, things like that.
Just give facts why. Let
It's
us
more,
understand
yeah,
what's
here's
going
the
on.
facts, and here's how some of the board members interpreted it. Here's how some other members interpreted it. This is where we think it could go. This is where we think you might have you gotta be worried about this, or you gotta see there's a potential here, this is a risk, or things like that. That's really what I just want you to lay it on the table. And, that would be greatly appreciated. So, I mean, to start with, I just appreciate you guys offering to do it, spend the time, and, just try to go from here. We have a deadline, December 31st, to notify Solid Waste Solutions if we wanted to continue with a second year on this contract that we already have. That gives them 6 months to change their plans if we say no, and it gives us 6 months to try to get ready to actually take action if we,
Was it 180-day notice?
yeah.
Prior to, yeah.
So, I'm not saying you can gather that information by then, but it would be really nice if by November you could give us a heads up if you think you'll have enough information that you think is viable for us to make a decision by the end of December. If you think it's gonna take more, it's gonna take more, and we'll have to just accept that. But I just wanted to give you that date so you understood what we're looking at, and if we can meet that deadline, it would be great to have that information and make a decision before we tell solid waste what our goal is.
This sort of started with me feeling we should be taking over the transfer station.
Yeah.
The work that I did into looking into it. I went into this believing that there was a lot of money in recycling.
Speak up, please.
I went into it believing there was a lot of money in recycling, and clearly there is not. And that's gotten worse as time's gone on. But certainly scrap metal still has a value.
Yeah.
You know, pay-as-you-throw materials are still, you charge more than it costs. It's not hard to establish that. Tires, typically we're charging something for a tire that would pay someone else less to take them away. So those things, you can ensure you make money, but we need to know where those points are. What I did find is the money is in the trash stream, hence trying to expand it is one of the ideas. You're operating at 20%.
Yeah.
I saw some potential, just in the numbers we have from resource management, that there's quite a bit of money coming in from that. But what I wanna see is the ability for us to not to drop bag prices, to drop sticker prices. And the reason is lower sticker prices will bring participation. That quote, sticker shock scares people away. And the $2 a bag, initially I thought I might wanna drop bag costs, but I think it's a good idea at $2 a bag, because that is gonna keep the recycling out of the trash. If you do dispose of recycling, it's a lower cost per ton than throwing a trash, which you'll find these things out.
Sure.
So that's what I'm leaning towards and looking for. We'll see what you guys find, but I want you to have an idea of where it came from and why. And the recycling, any options from us, getting rid of it in bulk as commingled, or if we separate it, it has value. If we find someone else that has a send that would take it maybe for a lower cost than burying it, or take it for free, anything and everything is on the table. But the sooner we have some raw numbers to show that factually, if we can start with what we have now and what we can project, if the other towns, you won't get a lot of commitment, but some sort of acknowledgement they'd want to participate, we'll get a rough idea what we think the numbers would be, and we could set a sticker cost and a bag cost, which will tell us what our break-even point is. We know what it costs a staff and employee down there, which I think we're only thinking about one full-time initially, and if we bring up volume, it would be 2. But we can look at that cost in our operating cost facility and sort of target what we need for revenues to come in, and then determine if those revenues are achievable. I believe they are, and once we get to that fact, then we'd want to invest more time and maybe keep the committee together to go further into it. So I would say the first thing we're looking for is, can it be profitable? Is it worth it for the town to take it over? And once we get to that point, we can move forward with those steps. And then if we can get you guys to stay on longer, look into it, that's what we want to study further, the recycling, bundlers and balers or bulk stuff, or hauling stuff in bins away, compactors and other things we can do. There's a whole lot more to look into it. We don't want to get too deep into it until we get to the first point of is it really viable?
Sure.
So if you could think about that in the focus, I'd appreciate it.
And just as a reminder, Hardwick has a recycling transfer station, and they manage it themselves, so they have their own data on what's going on with their recycles. I know that one of the selectmen says it's definitely been harder the last year or so,
Trying to
but
cut
they've
back.
generally been able to break even,
Yeah.
but it's not been easy, let's put it that way.
I assume that's the plan, break even is a win.
No.
Yeah.
Well, right now, the Solid Waste Solutions contract is a break even for the town. We don't pay them a cent, they don't pay us a
Okay.
cent.
Well, we do pay to throw our own trash away. We do.
The town's
Individual.
budget, the town's
Oh,
budget,
the town does.
Oh, okay, as well. Yeah.
Right.
correct.
We'll see
But
where it
what I
comes
mean
out.
is
No,
related to the
you're
management of the
absolutely right.
transfer
Looking at the
station, it's not a
numbers,
give or
it's,
take cost.
It's based on.
We'd like to target the numbers so it's projected to have a return revenue,
Yeah.
for us, which lets you look towards, equipment and things in the future, or put something back in the town coffers. But, bringing the sticker price down and trying to get participation back I think, is important. It's it's tough. If people wanna go throw recycling away, they're gonna pay $100 sticker to go throw away a refrigerator.
That's it.
And pay as you throw. There's no exception right now, and that's something we could think about. Do we make an exception for pay as you throw items that for non-stickered people, because we're still gonna make money off those items? You know, lots of things to think about.
Right, so,
More than we can get through in our 2 hours twice a
No,
month
that's-
with everything else we do.
and that's the other part. If you guys are sitting and talking, and you see something that might be kind of out of the box thinking, but you could still say, hey, that could work here, we're okay if that's something you also wanna add into your reporting and your documentation and thoughts like that, kinda like he was saying, maybe if they don't have a permit, is there a different fee for, you know, like if you don't bring a $2 bag, but you wanna throw trash away, do we just charge you $5 a bag that goes in? I don't know, you know what I mean? So yeah, we're definitely open to really just the whole economics, we just need to understand what our options are.
And something great, this just occurred to me from an idea. Notice people who have dumpsters in the yards, ask them what they're paying, ask them what it would take for
Oh,
them to
no,
come back.
that's, $2 a bag, you know, that's a commercial rate, you know, roughly for a bag of trash, so that's nothing but a work, and you're absolutely right, it's getting people to go away from that and use the town facility, if it's possible.
It is. And some people just don't wanna, and not to say that's,
Want to, yeah.
not to say we shouldn't think about collecting from the town. There's no reason the town can't buy a truck and collect, but there's a $250,000 upfront expense for a truck and so much stuff.
But that would also
Something for
come
the
down to
future.
grant opportunities, cause if we think that's something we could do there, you may actually say there's a grant that'll buy you your first truck.
Yep.
I don't know, I'm just saying, it's something to look into.
What I've heard from other towns before is when you get to that option, okay, people can opt in and pay a monthly fee or put it in the taxes. Nobody wants the taxes to go up. So it's gonna be hard to sell that in the taxes, but if it was something that people could have curbside pickup from the town at a lower cost than other people offer it, we may get great participation. So like I said, anything and everything is on the table for now.
And just because I don't know who's been involved with the development of this committee and things, there are 2 other boards that are definitely gonna be reading this and also contributing to decision-making. The Board of Health is a significant partner in this. They're also a good resource, so,
To that end, our charge agreed the Board of Health gets to vote on the members as well. So that may need to be affirmed by the Board of Health before it's.
okay. Well, we'll
If I'm
double check
thinking
that.
back, I
I
believe-
couldn't recall if we gave them voting rights or not.
I believe in the charge, we said that it had to be approved by both boards, but let's just make sure,
Okay.
just in case, I don't wanna,
Good
I don't
point.
want them to think that I'm trying to, they already think I'm stepping on their toes in the first place, and that wasn't the intent of this, and I certainly don't wanna give that impression again, so, we do have to verify with the charge. I don't think there'll be any issue with them, but they do have the right to make their vote as well.
Yeah,
And, you know, if one of them says yes, I think what we said was gonna be majority of the combined boards. So if you get one vote of the Board of Health, we're done, we have 4.
Finance Committee also is gonna be involved, because they'll be playing a role in the recommended budget before the town, and they have a strong voice and should be involved. At least when we start getting to the point where we actually can estimate potential number impact to the town and the potential risk of, is there actually gonna be the revenue that supports or offsets the cost? So those are, just wanted to give you that
Increased insurance
information.
may be something to
Other
look at.
boards you can speak to on your own time. They may have questions and may wanna have different ideas of, could you look for this information? This is what I'm gonna be looking for, or things like that. Feel free to reach out to them, see what you can do on that. Do you have anything, Charlie, you'd like to?
No, you guys have covered it well.
So there you go. I would just really like to once again say thank you for offering your time and,
Andrew, could you reach out to the Board of Health and run this by them? And I'm very sure we left it as majority vote, so as long as one of them confirms and says yes, then we can just move forward, and certainly doesn't stop it from moving forward anyways,
No,
looking for
I
information,
speak
but,
to Mr. Chase.
but-
Yeah, in the meantime.
but, I don't wanna leave, them out of this, cause I believe we included them in the vote, so.
No problem.
Thank you.
I have a question,
yes,
if it's all right.
definitely, sir.
All right, so just taking a few notes while you were talking, and you, Greg, a place to meet is
there
Okay.
a room or something that we can use to
We
meet
should
in?
be able to use any of the rooms we have in this building as long as it fits within open times. Thursdays definitely are not overly booked, so
Okay.
usually you'll find any one of them free on Thursday.
Okay.
Wednesdays are also somewhat free, say this time of day, until we get into the finance committee season and then they eat them all
Right,
up.
right, right.
The third floor meeting room that planning and conservation use are pretty well booked Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I think we've had people even use the second floor break room. We've used that at times. Senior center, I think, would also be an acceptable place if you wanted to, but we would have to post them, so if somebody wanted to be there at the meeting, they could just have some talk and conversation. Yeah,
You need a couple days' notice, so if you come up with if you figure out what you wanna have for regularity, you can pretty much schedule that. And then if the location has to change, we can just post that a couple days in advance.
right.
Yeah,
So
So I'd be back in with
Yep.
you and Sandy?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Right, if you talk with Kathy and the three of you come up with a day of the week you'd like to do it, or twice a month, or once a month, however often you wanna meet.
We got limited time. for December
Right.
31st,
December
so it's
31st,
gonna
yeah.
have to amp up, there's
Yeah.
only three,
Yeah, we've
less
been,
than 3 months.
we've been
Yeah,
trying since
so-
July, so yeah, it's taken a while to get it
Yeah.
going. It's
Okay,
Additionally, once you work out with Andrew and Sandy, it might be that they can also set you up to start scheduling your own, so you don't always have to talk to them about, can we schedule it, but that would also depend. I don't think it's as easy for you to do that and actually know if the room's available. You
Right.
can post it, but you might not know if the room's available, so it might be harder not to continue to work for them.
odds are one room would be available on most nights.
Yeah, just when you post it, you usually wanna say where, but
But Henry Wood's building as opposed
it's,
to,
it's legal, as long as you tell them that's what you're doing
A lot
and
of
Val
stuff is-
doesn't kick you
a lot of
out.
Stuff is solved down there. All right, and the other question I was, I think it was a conversation that you and I had just randomly one day, is, one of the selectmen gonna be part of this, or jumping in, or on the committee, or is that, was I misinterpreting?
we've gone back and forth on it. I think obviously I'm biased towards it.
Yep.
And I've done a lot of looking into it. I'd be glad to answer questions or come to meetings if you're asking things, but I don't think I should actively participate in it, because I don't wanna give the impression to anybody that I'm trying to influence the committee's
Right.
decision in any way. You know, I've made my case very clearly stated for him what I think, and I think, the same reason I don't go to a lot of these subcommittee meetings, before things come to us, because I think when the selectmen show up to those meetings, it tends to alter the course of the meeting, and I don't like to do that. I like the committees to operate on their own if they can. Glad to have input, glad to be there, but,
Okay.
I worry about us being over-involved in things, and the other committees not being able to perform their tasks
Yeah, I don't know.
autonomously.
I had that.
So, yeah, I don't know if one of these
Yeah.
guys wants to do it, that, I got no
Okay.
objection
I
to
was
that.
just
think
curious.
For me, it's not a good idea.
I think it would be more of a, either as requested, somebody could be there,
Okay,
or we may show up, but it wouldn't necessarily be count on us being there. Also, to add to that, just Charlie knows, he was at the QMEMP meeting, and it looks like between now and till we retire, we just got really busy. It's- We, just more committees and things that want more time and more weekly and monthly meeting type stuff going on, and so it's gonna be hard for me to set that time aside with prep for the special town meeting, so I can't commit to it. But I might stop in one here and there just to kinda get say a midterm checkup of where you at,
Bring
what
your
you're
coffee and
doing,
donuts.
you know, that type of stuff.
as long as.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
No curiosities or concerns, or?
No, I don't think so. I think I've actually been thinking about it, looking at different things somewhat, going over it, but.
And talk to people too and see what people think, you know?
Right.
We all hear from the people we hear from on a regular basis, and it's, you know,
Yep.
95% of the town I don't hear from, so, you know.
Yeah, sure.
If you have a group of 30 people you talk to all the time, you know their opinion, it doesn't mean
Right.
it's consistent with the rest of the town, so.
Right.
And if you want access to the station outside of just the drive-through, throw your trash away, where you can actually walk it a little bit more freely, and maybe even work with Andrew, we can set up a time and a date where you can walk it, and you can even walk the area that actually currently isn't really developed, to get a better sense of grades and everything. So if we say, hey, what if we did this and we did that, you might mentally have a better idea of, okay, what's that mean? Do we have to flatten out grade and regrade to put something there, or does it already look like it would fit there? And so I'm just bringing that up.
If we get to
Just
that
work with
phase two-
Andrew, and we can easily set up a,
At that phase, you work with DEP, because there are constraints for how close we can go to border property lines and things for different types of things there, so.
There is wetlands down there.
Yeah, so it's important to know what we can and can't do. Doesn't mean we can't use a lot of that, it's just what we can put there will be
Right.
strictly controlled.
in the Board of Health, they have their consultant, Mark Popham. He's familiar with most of the DEP regulations also, so he can give you a head start on some of those things that, even if he won't quote it, he might be able to tell you what section to start looking into, or what department specifically, DEP, you want to talk to, things like that, if you want to clarify some information. So he's a good resource for, at least at minimum, the networking. But I think he's also a good resource just based on the knowledge he has about transfer stations and our current transfer station, because he's been involved with it for a while.
Yes, and he used to write contracts with Solid Waste Solutions, his previous employee.
Yes, he did. So, all I can do is, once again, say thank you. Anybody in the crowd have any questions before we let him go? All right, then. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, gentlemen.
Guys.
Once again,
Nice to meet you.
much appreciated. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I'll get you. Thank you very much.
So
It's a
anyway,
sign-in sheet, so we know you're here.
thanks for happy second.
I could just drag this out longer, but no, all right. Let's hit the Seven Hills Foundation discussion topic.
Do the first one on new business first, because she's here.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. I'll take that back. Let's go to Mary Markowski.
Yeah, so, Nancy and I, interviewed three candidates for this position. Mary is very clearly qualified for this position. I think she'd be a great fit, in the department, great fit for the town. I don't know if you wanna come up and introduce yourself.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Good firm handshake.
If you haven't caught on,
Have a seat.
this is Greg O'Sullivan, Charlie Chase, and I'm Matt Urban.
Nice to officially meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
So why do you want the job?
Well, I've been in finance for most of my career.
Can you speak a little louder?
I can, yes. I've been in finance most of my career, and money is something that is intriguing, and I like to watch it come and go. I was a bursar in my last position, and I'm looking to get a little bit more involved within the community spectrum. The college level was a little bit daunting, teaching children. I want to kind of work with people, hopefully, that have a little bit more of an idea of what they're doing when it comes to their pocketbooks. But Nancy and I kind of discussed, sometimes that's not always the case in this arena either. But I'm used to the educational platform as well, so working with the community is part of what I did at the bank, which is where I was prior to being a bursar as well. So I'm hoping to be a great little fit into the community and part of the town.
You have any questions?
Nope, I like this to be with the department head and administrator, so as you know, I will not.
Going to be an interesting time because we're trying to get a bond rating, our bond rating back, and I think that that'll be,
Very exciting.
yeah, it's going to be some interesting issues for you to work on with the new treasurer, collector when we get going.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Do we have a motion?
Motion to appoint Mary as our, let me get this right. Assistant collector.
Yep.
Second.
Call for vote?
Aye.
Right.
Aye. Thank you very much,
Excellent.
Mary.
Thank you all. Wonderful
Welcome.
to meet you.
You
I
got it.
look pleasure to work with you in the future.
You got it.
You can say that now, we'll see. No, it'll be good.
Well-
It's a nice place to work at.
Thanks, Mary.
Talk to you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew.
Executive session.
Who's it go to?
Yeah, I'll keep it here.
And, I'm used to throwing it to her, and then I was like, wait,
She doesn't want it.
all right.
The boss left, so I.
Enjoy your day. Thank you for coming. All right, we'll go back to the Seven Hills Foundation. Who put this on the agenda this time?
I just kept it on, at your last meeting, you stated that you wanted to continue the discussion at the next meeting, so.
Gotcha.
kept it on.
Okay, just wanted to, do you have a specific thing you'd like to speak to on this, Greg, or no?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't really think about it much because I'm not getting my packets open to my electronic media. But yeah, my thoughts basically, I wasn't pleased with their letter last time, as we discussed briefly at the meeting. I don't know, I think it might be effective to talk to the states, I don't know if you call it the agency or authority that sends them money from the state. I would think that they are expecting a certain care for the kids. And that's been our concern right along, that these students are out, they are a danger to themselves if they're lost in the woods. We know how big the woods are here in town and how deeply lost they can get if they get out and get turned around. It's very challenging for us to have to go look for them depending where they are, especially if they're trying not to be found. You're not talking about people as the colder weather comes and not going out with camping gear ready to be outside. You're taking off what's on their back. And, I don't understand the resistance to making a more concerted effort on keeping after and keeping control of where they are. Something as simple as cameras or, an exiting doorbell on the door so they know when someone's left. There's gotta be ways they can take some steps, but they've refused to discuss any of them with us. They refuse, once again, to come to our meeting, which is required. We cannot go to theirs by law. There's no way for us to record it there and have it out on camera, so. They're completely avoiding coming here, and they've not made any concessions or any attempt to help stem this tide of kids running off, and I'm very frustrated. So I would think, and the Labor Council said he's aware of some of these rules, and maybe we should ask him to look into it. I'm sure that would incur an expense if we do it, though. We'd have to decide what's reasonable to do. This isn't really a labor issue, but if he's familiar with these, perhaps he would give us some time or steer us in a better direction, or give us an estimate for what it might cost to have him look into it on our behalf legally. It sounds like he was pretty well versed in it from our discussion the other night. I refuse to believe there is no action we can take. If they don't want to fence their property in, the town could fence in the properties that wish it around there. That's another way.
True.
If the people on the private property don't like people entering their property, we could offer to fence that in, and see what our expense would be to do that. And that would at least restrict access from certain points and along the public side. So if they don't want to do something, we could also look into the possibility and expense of doing it from the other side. And although it certainly disrupts abutting landowners more than anybody, I don't think there's anybody in town that hasn't seen these kids at some point. Helicopters flying over the houses at night, there's a lot of that. Police cars cruising the areas, walking down driveways. I've seen them up in my driveway, flashlights hooked up for kids. Nobody wants this disruption. I'm sure the town would be in favor of, we could put it to a vote and see, but I think they'd be in favor of spending some money if needed to be for us to close in the private and public side of that facility. And then at least they're only going out one way at that point, and that's down the road. And I'd just like to see us keep working at it, just because they're digging their heels in and not budging and not coming to talk to us and not making any attempts. There's no reason for us to discontinue this.
Gotcha.
Man, I took very strong exception to the letter that we've got, a copy of the letter we got to Attorney Baird from them. And, you know, it implies and it outright mentions that, you know, we disparage their clients and stuff like that. I don't think any member of this board has done that. And I really was upset when I saw that, because we've asked for some cooperation on some issues. That doesn't mean that we're disparaging them or we want no part or anything else. But, and I don't sense that the speech has been hostile in any way, shape, or form. And I was really upset when I saw that. And I think that we have a lot of residents in the town that are very concerned about what's going on and not staying there and, you know, doing stuff around town. And I'll be very kind when I say they're infringing upon the property rights and the public safety and well-being of our residents. And I think that, if anything, at the very least, Seven Hills has a public relations problem here that's pretty big. But I was really upset with the letter and the tone, and, you know, they haven't run the place since 1899. And I think to give that impression is pretty misleading. But, you know, to say that we are against, you know, people with disabilities or inferring that in the letter, it's the furthest from the truth. We haven't done that. Nobody on this board has said that. And I was really irritated when I saw it. I can't help it if they haven't looked at the meetings, but, and we went in, I think, Andrew, when you and I were in there at that meeting, we were very, very civil, very professional with them about the whole situation. In mentioning the fence was mentioned at that time. There was nothing mentioned back, and that would have been the place to do it when we had Representative Berthium and Senator Goby there. There was nothing said back to us, and that was discussed. So, you know, I thought maybe we need another meeting with them, but, you know, I was just a little taken aback at this letter. And we have a few of their clients at our schools. Nobody has talked about any of that and the cost associated with that. And, you know, so I don't think, and we mentioned that to them, and, you know, so I was really irritated by this letter, to put it bluntly. And, you know, for them to try and say what we were thinking is just the furthest from the truth.
I think my language was the strongest language when I said they're not good neighbors. But you know what makes good neighbors? There's an adage about that.
Yeah.
Fences make good neighbors.
Yes.
It's as simple, it's as old as the day is long, and it's true.
I agree with Charlie on this, that I felt like this letter, as well as the information that they provided that got presented in the newspapers, was strictly sent to distract from the issues we were raising and we were looking for cooperation on. The letter primarily said that they do great things for the community. The Board of Selectmen, they used the word, and I had never heard this word until I read it in the paper, or in the letter, one of the two, that all happened within like a 4-day period or something. There's students as prisoners. Not once has anybody on this board, I believe, called any of their students prisoners. We have discussed that they have some students that have shown violent tendencies. We referenced the 3 youths that escaped, made it to Hubbardston, that 2-day, 48-hour window, etc. We referenced that there were reports of break-ins along the way, whether it was breaking into a vehicle or potentially a trailer or a house. Some of those things came up. I've had firsthand reports of someone breaking into the vehicle on their property from members of this town that night, that event. Because of that, we believe this is something we should discuss with Stetson. We have been trying to discuss with them as a board, which we cannot do except in public meeting, since before January. The discussion in this public forum never got quite as heated, or the letter we referenced and asked that they put the fence up would have never happened, except that they refused to meet with the board. They refused to talk to us for months on end. And so we felt we had to send them a letter stating, based on the recent events, and that was the first of 2 or 3 youths that got away within a month. We had the Hubbardston one, then a week later, someone else escaped on a Sunday, and then, eloped on Sunday. Apparently, I'm using bad language. And then recently, just, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we were here in this talking about another elopement and trying to get some better information on how they handle it. And that only got so far. I don't know if we ever got follow-up on some of the questions we had, that they said they would offer more info, but apparently they didn't. So we're still trying to figure out what's going on up there. And I think most people in this letter truly pushed everything on the youth. They say we're disparaging the youths on their site. What we are is we're questioning the management of that site by Seven Hills. And it's owned by Seven Hills. You can call it Stetson if you want, but it's no longer Stetson. That's what goes back to the 1800s. It's run by Seven Hills. It's a different program being run now than it was decades ago, let alone more than 100 years ago. We wanted to discuss with them some of the issues and concerns we had between communication protocol with the local law enforcement, which also results in communication protocol through them with the town. A lot of the abutting neighbors are concerned when random people are running through their yard and they don't know why. Whether it's the youth or the actual faculty chasing the youth, they still don't know why someone's in their yard. If they knew, because proper communication was made so that they could be told, this is what's going on, don't worry about it, but they also get notice that if they want to, they might go lock some doors and windows if their habit isn't to always have the doors and windows locked. But giving them notification gives them the right to make that decision. But if you choose not to communicate, the homeowners living next to them don't have the opportunity to take precautions, even if it's a simple theft of something that would be very minor. It's still something that that owner may not want to be taken, and it might be a theft of opportunity because someone says, I might need this to continue getting where I want to go. And I leave that very generically because I don't know where they want to go. I don't know what's in their mind. I'm not saying they're bad children or any, but for some reason they felt they had to leave the site and go somewhere. I'm not saying that anything Seven Hills did there caused that child to want to leave the site. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying they did leave the site. And they've given us their own procedures on that, and it pretty much means if they lose sight of a youth, they're supposed to call someone. They have certain number of accountability. I don't want to call it bed checks, but they have a way of checking do we know that everybody's assigned to us is here in the building at this point in time. They do it, I don't know how often. I think they mentioned maybe every 15 minutes, every half hour, they're supposedly doing their checks so they know that everybody's there. But then we hear somebody hasn't been seen for 3 hours before the police get called. Well, that undermines the two procedures they flat out said they use. So for me, it tells me that we have a concern with the management of the site because they still choose not to communicate with the town in those moments. We're not saying do it so that we can all call out an issue with what they're managing. We're saying do it so we can respond more quickly and give people notice that something's going on. And as that goes on, it's easier to know that it's being done right, and therefore you can actually feel safer because you've been told, not less safe because something happened. Right now they feel completely unsafe because they normally don't hear about it either until the helicopters are above their houses, someone's running through the yard, they don't know why, or maybe it's not even their yard, they're just running around in public being chased by somebody and everybody's calling 911 except the company, which is an example that has occurred in the past. Bystanders seeing adults chasing youths tend to think they need to call the police. If you don't call the police before you go chasing them, you're making it harder on the police. You're also making it harder on the people that are down there trying to understand what's going on because, again, no notification went out to give anybody a chance to understand it. So what bothered me the most here is not only did they try to put words in the mouths of the Board of Selectmen and present us as someone that has issues with the actual use on site, and then go on to explain how they've been great to the town. In the very last sentence of this letter says, based on the regional input-output modeling system, I'm sure you all understand what that one is, developed by the U.S. Department of Commerce. Again, an out-of-touch statistical-based methodology that probably doesn't relate to anything at our ground level. The total direct economic impact of the Stetson School on the Greater Barrie community has been $35 million and 190. I mean, it's just. Are they saying since 1800s, Barrie, the Stetson School has contributed $35 million to the? Or are they saying in what time frame? What? So they technically are just throwing out numbers to make themselves look good. They're actually not trying to prove a point. And they're distracting from the issues we put in our letter, which is we have concerns with security and communication. And rather than even addressing those as we had requested, they flat out put up a smoke screen, tried to push the attention to the other side, and see if they can get people in the general public to dislike the Board of Selectmen for trying to represent the town's people that have told us they have an issue with the lack of communication and not knowing why someone's running through their yard, which is a whole different legal battle. There's a certain point where even if they're under your custody, you can't just have the right to go running through other people's property without some type of notice. I'm not saying that they did something illegal, but I'm saying that potentially they did, depending on if somebody's got signs up in their yard saying no trespassing. At that point, they're supposed to stop and call the police, not go running into the private property after the child. There are certain things that they seem to feel like they're immune to because they have this guardianship of the youth. And I think they need to realize they're not immune. They have to participate, they have to work with the community, and that's not just getting their students to donate money to our public safety every year. or giving us 4 acres of land one year and saying that should be good enough, look how good we are, when we have other nonprofits that are probably better neighbors who give us an equivalent of 1 acre in money almost every year without us ever asking. There's no agreement, they just offer it. There's no written agreement,
Excuse me. I'll be
no
right back.
pilot agreement. They just offer it because they're able, they're willing, and they understand the relationship and how we work with them. So I think they need to understand the difference between how they present themselves on paper versus how they present themselves in real life. And that doesn't mean I can't still work with the people there and we can still turn the page and start getting in the direction we want to go. It just means they need to come meet us as a board and just have the conversations and explain to us why they can or can't do something. Personally, I still have not gotten anything that makes any sense to me other than, please leave us alone, is what I'm hearing and reading between the lines. And I don't think that's fair to our town for them to just say, please just let it be. Please just let it be. Because it's not fair. It's just not fair to the people that are worried every day, every night, every weekend if someone might be coming through their backyard and up to their house and looking for something. And for them to respond the way they did just made me feel like they don't truly understand the concept of a good neighbor. But, like Greg said, if that's the type of neighbor they think they want to be, then they should put up a fence and build their own little island in the center of Barry. And because that's the type of neighbor they pretty much said they are with the type of response they gave here. And I just wanted to take this moment, this platform, to give a thorough, this is what's deep from my heart. We sent a letter from the Board of Selectmen to them. They had their attorney with their attorney's letterhead. This isn't Stetson, this isn't Seven Hills, this is their attorney, sent a letter to our town's attorney and pretty much didn't even respond to our letter. Outside of thinking that the Board of Selectmen are disparaging to the youths and that they've been great to the town. So I'm just very disappointed that when we send a letter to, I think, Joe Allred, right? We address it directly to him. He couldn't take the time to come before the Board of Selectmen and talk to us about our concerns. I've got nothing more to say, but I do believe it needed to be said.
Yep.
Anybody else?
We got our words out, we should move on.
Sam's got a comment. Member of the public, for those that need to know.
I'd like to say something in support of the thoughts of perhaps a lot of the abutters. Perhaps I'm putting myself in their position. Now, they have a nice environment, this school, it's pretty. And if my property were abutting a nice environment, I'd be kind of happy. However, if these people in the environment put a fence up at the property line, it would probably detract from the value of my property. And I wouldn't be very happy about that. So a fence is kind of nice in some instances, but maybe that's not the direction because it's going to make more discord between the abutters who might have lost some value when a new customer comes in and says, I'd like to buy it, and they say, well, why is there a fence there? Well, sometimes those kids run away and are chased by police, and the new customer, the new possible purchaser of the property may say, well, yeah, I don't want to live here. So that's something you need to think about before you talk about fences. Thank you.
I would just, thank you, I do have a counter to that. Type of fence makes a difference on how you see that. You might be envisioning a chain link fence. I might be envisioning a nice brand new privacy fence, wood slat, something that could actually look nice and not be a detraction. And secondly, if somebody's gonna sell that property to somebody and not disclose the fact that that's what is right next to you, that's between you and the buyer. But that still exists there whether the fence is there or not. If a buyer wants to buy land or develop on something right next to Stetson School, it's their due diligence to figure out that potential effect. And apparently, if all they do is just read some of the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes or some of our local paper articles, they can catch on pretty quickly about the recent issues that have been a concern of ours. So the fence is actually gonna be something that would be more important to Stetson. And I'm thinking if they feel like a fence makes their children feel like they're in a prison, they would put up a fence that's not chain link fence. They would choose something that is more visually appealing. We didn't set regulations on what type of fence. We just mentioned that because when the youths escape out the back of the sides of the property, more often than not, it takes less than 30 seconds and they no longer have eyes on that youth. You're in the woods and you got a child running from you, you tell me how quickly you're gonna catch up to him and keep your eyes on him the whole time through that woods. And now the abutters are concerned where they're going. Are they running into their sheds to hide? Are they running into houses? Because nobody's gonna look in a house. But they do, because we've had abutters say that faculty have looked through windows of houses or something looking for somebody and it's confused. They've been totally confused why someone's looking. I can only state that as reported to me. So I'm not gonna say the validity of it. It's just been told to me that that has happened. I trust the source. That's why I'm bringing it up. It's one of the reasons we thought it was time to bring it to a public meeting agenda item and start making action on it, because our attempt to try to do it less out in the public failed because they pretty much just refused. And so it was time to take the next step. And this is the response we got. And this actually, just to remind everybody, that whole letter, if I recall right, started after that issue of the 3 youths, because that's when we had, I think, Lucy Allen came in and as an abutter and represented her concerns as well as others. And we finally said, okay, we got to write a letter because doing something else didn't work. So the letter we sent was in response to an incident that actually occurred. Not an incident we make up about theories and rumors about the type of person that's on that site. We spoke to an exact incident that occurred in recent history, and we asked them to address the issues again after we've already been talking to them behind the scenes for months. If you need to, we can track all the paperwork for months if we had to. Please don't ask the FOIA if you don't have to, though.
Was there any feedback, Matt, from town council?
I have not received any from them.
Just forwarding the letter.
Man, it's just, I've been in the town, I knew Stetson. I went to school with Stetson kids. The Stetson kids walked around the common, they bought stuff in the stores. Robinsons that ran it at that time treated those boys like they were his kids. Like they were parents. Kids were fine. It makes me wonder what's wrong with the kids in there now. How are they being treated? It's just, that they want to run away.
I can only
You know,
suggest it's not necessarily what's wrong with the kids, but it is a certain state of our current government-run social services. Because they, and understandably, they have to create certain objective policies and procedures. And then they have to hire people to fill these roles. And what happens is you lose that family connection because it's no longer owned by someone that takes it as if it's their family. It's someone taking a job, they do their best and they go. Especially when they're doing their best, doesn't allow them to do what they think is better because a policy prevents them from taking the next step that they think would be appropriate. So it's very difficult. So I'm not gonna try to say that it's because Seven Hills or Stetson are doing a poor job within those rules. I'm not necessarily saying because all the rules are bad. I'm just saying it's a very challenging environment to create a disconnected person and create a policy for them to help somebody that is going through some troubles. In other words, you get that third party, I never knew this kid. Now they've got to come in as a job and find a way to get this kid caught up to speed with history of that kid and then figure out how to get them better. When that's the issue anytime you really try to press upon government to resolve issues you can't just work out with your own neighbors. And I'm not saying there isn't a place, but it's a difficult place when the government is given too much authority to get into places. Some of these kids are being saved through the program and they need the help, and that's why I'm not saying it's bad programming. Sometimes you're just gonna run into it. You know, most of the stuff we're dealing with is what, maybe 5% of that population are we actually thinking these issues apply and we need to be concerned about. It's not a high amount. It's probably less than the average number of people in the general public that you would have some concerns with based on their personality, their physical ability, and would they do something bad to you. That's just the nature of humans. You can grab any demographic you want, and you're gonna probably say there's 5% of bad people. I mean, it's the same case with people that work for municipalities. You know, public safety if you take a large enough population, you're gonna see 5% of those people are just as crooked as somebody they're arresting. It's human nature. You can't weed it out the way you wish. So I'm just saying that I don't want to necessarily say it's the kids necessarily, but it is the type of environment that's been cultured because you do not have that on-hands ownership that really is there straight for that, who had the ability to choose the employees just for that, and probably had maybe a little bit leeway in how those employees are managed compared to what we're allowed to do now with employees. I got other theories on that, but I'm not gonna bring it up now because now we're getting into my personal philosophies of life, so we'll stop there. I have nothing more on this. Does anybody else have anything to contribute? All right, let's move on to the next item. Happier Times, 250th Anniversary Committee. I'll let Andrew lead this discussion with Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie requested this item be on the agenda. I pretty much just rehashed the 250th anniversary charge that I had thrown together back in November. I'm sure there's probably more tasks to add to it or some additions that you'd like to make, but I figured it'd be a good starting point for discussion and turn over to Charlie. If you have anything you want to add to it?
Yeah.
your thoughts were, if you want.
No,
if
that
you want
looks,
to proceed.
looks good right now. I just wanted it brought up. I just didn't want to fall by the wayside. Time moves on.
One thing I would mention is it got brought up that Hubbardston now has a recreational director that kind of volunteered to do the position and apparently was heavily involved in their 250th recently. It would probably be a good resource if we reached out to her just to see even if it's something we should add items to this, or if she's interested in when we do create the committee to work with the committee and just bounce some things off with her, how she accomplished it. Might be worth, even while we wait before we have a committee, but we definitely are looking for applicants. This is, I do believe we're looking for applicants. We may not have approved the charge, but we need to get people going because 2024 is gonna come by very fast.
I believe we didn't make a charge yet. We talked about doing it soon, though,
Yeah.
because 6 years for this type of event is
Yeah.
an exorbitant amount of time.
So we need to start figuring out, and maybe even Hubbardston can tell us total cost of the event they did, and then we can start figuring out what we need to budget, plan for. I guess the other thing is an event like this, something where somebody would want like a company to come in with the carnival rides, the Ferris wheel stuff, because it's not something we do a lot around here, but neither is 250-year anniversary, so it does seem like it might be that next step up worth doing if there's interest. I just don't know if there's interest. You know, they could set up at Felton Field and we could do something else at, you know, maybe a big event even at the school that might have a whole bunch of like field day type game things, and so it could be a town-wide spread out event. I'm just saying there's a lot of little pieces we could put into this and we would just, but yeah, time flies once you realize you have a deadline and we're already like probably a year behind that deadline. We just don't know it yet.
I had been involved with the anniversary committee, prior community, not directly involved, but from the management side. But one thing that we did do was provide, you know, just a seed bank from tax funding, just to basically say, all right, here's kind of like, you know, here's the money that you have to start with. Now you have to start doing some fundraising and stuff like that. Leave that to the committee to decide, but you know, kind of all the logistics and trying to gain revenues from that, with the hope that, you know, at the end of the day that they'd be able to turn back that seed money to the town. But say it's however you guys want to proceed with it.
And that's something eventually we're gonna need to work with the finance committee over the years to find out how much money we do wanna put in as a town versus just fundraising. You know, 'cause we do have 6 years to possibly say, you know, contribute some each year and start building up a base that, so it doesn't hit one tax year too hard.
Which means we need to establish an account for this. This is gonna be an official town charge, an official town event, it's gonna be an official town account. So we have to make sure that the money is appropriated, handled, and accounted for properly. And it's gonna have to be, probably a capital expense account set aside for this item. So we're allowed to build money in it, so we have to be careful that we establish that in the proper manner soon. Because I think we should get the charge going soon. And you know, as Charlie indicated, maybe getting, you know, horse-drawn carriages, like, you know, if you can get the Clydesdales, that is something really nice for this event. You know, Barry did make a lot of different plows and carriages and things, I think, over the years in the history. You never know, people that have things like that might wanna bring them back and involved in this. You know, it just takes time to reach out and get people lined up. You wanna have a large band, from one of the colleges would be fantastic. But we need time, to schedule that, so we need to think about a date properly. Because if people are gonna try to schedule these things, how far out, you could ask that of Hardwick as well, how far out did you have to schedule these larger things? So how soon do we actually need to set an actual date for it? So if it's going to be sort of maybe one activity every day for a week, culminating with with, the fair could go on all week, and we have some event in town every day with that, culminating with a huge parade and the fair down, later on the day down there. But we need to have a date to shoot for. We can't just plan it and say, well, the date's coming, because anyone that's planning something that we're looking for, a grandeur of a large band or a horse-drawn, Clydesdale team or something, we're gonna need a specific date years in advance.
We could
We could look at.
choose the date or week revolving around the 17th, 2024.
We could look at it too as far as.
Possibly
maybe-
do the town meeting that week.
I mean,
And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is the big event. So in other words, town meeting, and then you go running into having fun the rest of the week, because we all so badly need to have fun after a town meeting.
I mean, you could look at it too as a year-long event, or a year-long event too, and schedule, smaller events throughout the year with one big grand event. So like,
I like
a
it.
Christmas tree bonfire at the beginning of the year, ice cream sundae in the middle, social at some point, just smaller events with one big parade event, kind of, with the smaller events kind of generating that interest, so, we can, it depends on what we get for interest, and hopefully, I think that would be better to kind of put that onto the committee to go, what are your thoughts are, and kind of let them drive it, so that way they feel like they have some real ownership in this process.
Right, you could do a movie month, every weekend, if we did something like you said, January, February, March, April, May leading up to it, you could have movies through the month of March, or do whatever. You can't do bonfires you could do bonfires every weekend, would that be a bit much? I think it's start with one.
Right.
But maybe when the weather gets nice, you do something that's, for every weekend in February, we're gonna do this. And every weekend in March, we're gonna do this,
I throw that idea.
No, I like
It's
that
like
idea.
people, everybody's looking to get rid of their Christmas tree, it's a great way to have a community event and provide us a townwide
My
service.
daughter's threatened to work that out for years. She's been
Environmental
threatening to organize a
disaster.
Christmas tree gathering and a big bonfire down at the field for public. Good idea.
So, just to put it out there though, in just a sec, because I didn't want to get too involved in what we should do for this, because we're trying to create the committee to decide what we will do. Originally, we recommended 9 members. It stated 1-year terms, annual reappointment by the Board of Selectmen. For this, I like maybe a little bit more continuity. So, if someone gets on this, I probably would be inclined giving them this all the way to the end. I mean, 6 years is 6 years, but 6 years is, again, if you're on this committee, it's gonna fly, and in 1 year, you're gone, because all of a sudden we get 3 more applicants that wanna be on, and we wanna rotate. We're actually probably gonna make it harder to stay on the same page to get to an end. So, outside of that committee voting someone off and coming back to the board saying this person really is not helping the rest of us, or someone retiring, moving on, whatever, I would suggest that if you want to be on the board, we're not looking to have to reappoint you every year. We want someone that's going to take it from the beginning and do what you can to put in the time. If you can only give 3 years and then that's fine. We'll get someone to fill it, but I don't want you to think we're going to kick you off just because someone else might have been on the application list and it's 1 year later. Because even though it's a 9-member full committee that we're creating, it doesn't mean that other people in town can't still contribute.
I would state it as a 6-year appointment for up to 9 people. If someone should leave the committee, we will fill that vacancy at that time. And part of the charge we've written that we have the right to remove any person we want to. So if somebody is if everyone's having trouble with one person, we can remove them. We don't have to say in case they're removed or whatever, but just say if a vacancy occurs, we'll refill the vacancy and it's for the term of this committee. And we'll just replenish as needed, but make a 6-year charge for everyone, up to.
Yeah. Or just a charge expiring on a week after the event is over. There may still be some follow-up stuff we'd definitely like to have
I'd better go to the end of the
appreciated
year.
on.
There may be
So-
checks and things to settle and
I
things.
was gonna say, yeah, you might wanna go a little bit beyond that, just
Go
that
a
way we
couple
can
months.
wrap.
Let it go.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I meant.
That's what
Something,
we
that's all
did.
I meant. Don't close it on the day of the event. But either way, did you have something more to add?
Well, if you have other towns that I've known about, when you have an event, like in each month, you can make it an event, like they've had dinners or dances or things, and there's tickets for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it earns
Fundraising.
money towards your event, the big one.
Hopefully have them.
Monthly
like
years
fundraising
leading up
events.
to it, so.
That's possible, but I have noticed regionally we're having a lot of events from a lot of places already, so it's nonstop competition. So that I think would be better if we do that for the next 6 years to develop that, like a dance night where the hosting venue gives 50% to this and the other 50% is for their own ability to run it, because there's only so many places you can do where you don't still need to cover the operational cost to do it. But that, again, this is where I'd really like the committee to really start working this out. Because I agree, we could sit here and talk all night about these theories, and I think they're all viable. I think they're good ideas. So I would like to see if we can get this cleaned up a little bit with the comments. Again, it would be standard open meeting law, conflict of interest, rules, regs, all the wonderful whatever comes from being a subcommittee type thing or the Board of Selectmen.
I'll try to get more into this forum.
Okay.
And I would say if they're gonna expend money, they just have to, the expenditures have to be approved by at least the administrator, if not the board. I don't wanna give them the ability to just
Yeah, just,
spend for advertising things that they need.
yeah, I definitely would rather
I
them
think-
budget what they think they need and bring it back to us before we give them anything to actually spend.
Yeah.
And I'd prefer not spending anything that fits into like a Parks and Recs or other type of budget account. Giving them money to help accomplish this, I'd rather us know what the cost is and not take away from the other things we're already doing in town,
I was saying that.
if
more
if
for-
possible.
More
That's
for
the way we did it
Andrew and
before.
finance to think about that, not for us to.
Oh, I got you.
Something else you can think about that should be included maybe with the charge.
How do we plan for it, deal with it?
Right.
Okay.
So then we can make that as, a bit nice if we come back next time and we can start it.
That's the way we did it before.
Oh.
I was on the board when we did the 225th, and they had their own budget. Not everything cost a lot of money. There were things that involved schools and
Okay.
different things, and there was a fireman's muster at one point, as I recall, and all kinds of things. Nothing.
I'm sure we can put on a heck of a muster if they started having years to plan it.
Some things didn't cost that much.
We've done
and
it before, not too long ago.
churches were involved with
Great locations.
dinners and.
Right. And that's
Stuff.
where that, really reaching out to the community
Yeah,
and figuring
some of that
out
stuff
where each
doesn't
part wants to
Cost the
participate.
town anything really, but some did. So, but it was a good thing for the town. It built a lot of spirit. It was a wonderful time.
No, I like it. And we have so many organizations that volunteer time regularly anyway, from, the Lions, the Masons, the
Mhm.
different churches, the,
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a
Okay.
unique event. It's gonna draw
I think once it
interest.
gets going, it'll take a life of its own.
I agree.
All right, again, a lot of this stuff is getting too administrative, so I'd rather go down to the Halloween activities. And I think that, does that include these use of town?
Yeah, so I basically ran, through like a new application process through a viewpoint for a, special event permit and use of town property permit, for the very scary Halloween.
Okay,
Hoping to basically structure it like we did last year, but, expand upon it with, hopefully more people being involved and, more participation in the carved pumpkin contest, but overall premise staying the same of, we know that we have a large influx of people coming in on Halloween that like to enjoy trick or treating and giving a venue that people that might not live right on the common, an opportunity to participate in that by establishing the trunk and treat event on concert room, yeah.
Gotcha. So, as I'm reading this, 854 is the special event permit. And the reason I was confused as to who's submitting this is because event organization is the town of Barry. Because I'm looking like, who's asking for this?
Right.
I'm like, you're submitting it to the town of Barry, but who are you?
Yeah.
Now I better understand how I'm reading these are new forms for us to be reading compared to how it used to be presented, so
One's
it's
the
easier
event
for me to,
permit And one's a request of use of property.
yeah. And these are not just tests, these are official requests, just to make sure, okay.
Official request, yes.
Um,
So what we did was we took all, you know, for the new application form, so we took all that same information, actually added, that we were requesting on the special event permit, put that into the viewpoint system, and then actually asked a few additional questions that help kind of triage the approval process, so that way the departments that are actually being affected by an event are the ones that are signing off on it, rather than just blanket, hey, I'm holding a tag sale, but I need conservation sign off. So that way, it kind of tailors that to say, okay, yes, you're closing a road, yeah, you need DPW's approval, or you need DPW to review and sign off on this as well. So it adds some checks and balances based off of what people are asking, so hopefully it's a little bit more straightforward for people, and also straightforward for you guys in your approval process.
All right.
So every place here where it says it involved the closure of a road, you say, yes, we would expect to see the police sign off on that, or DPW sign off on that before it comes here.
Yes.
Well, I'd make a motion, we grant Mr. Golis's request for use of town property and special permit for the Halloween event on October 31st, and allow him to work with the police for the necessary road closures, and waive any fees that are associated with this.
I will second that.
Call for a vote?
Aye?
All right.
Aye.
I also have additional information from the Ruggles Lane PTO. I just got the application stuff in today, so it's being circulated through the boards for their review, and I should have that for your next meeting.
Is that for the parade the night before?
Yes. Yep.
In the future, I'm wondering if, because it's generally all the same neighborhood, it may be different groups. Should we just start working that under one permit?
We could.
I'm just curious, in other words, if the town's gonna organize an event like we started doing this time, because is it worth anybody that wants to participate just to get kind of pulled in under the town's, this is what's gonna happen at the event, so in the future, the PTO can still do their parade the way they do it, but they don't have to do their own application process, because it's kind of all the same event in the same geographically connected area.
The real, idea is to make sure that you guys and all the involved applicants know what's going on. So whether or not that's one approval or it's 10 approvals, it's just a matter of coordination. This was kind of done in a test sense to see whether or not, hey, the process works.
Yeah.
But, and now the PTO's doing it kind of as an outside, all right, well, if they're able to accomplish the goal of processing a permit, then we're able to do that. I'm sure next year we could probably coordinate things a little bit better.
And that's all I meant, maybe thinking ahead, is it more efficient or not?
As our
There may be
experience-
holes in my thought, and it's just not helping if we do that, I
Our
don't know.
experience with the Christmas committee is we might offend the PTO if we try to bring them in under our umbrella. They might wanna stay independent. I'd say we more might wanna offer, if they'd rather us to bring it in under our permit, offer that to them.
Exactly,
I
that
don't
was
wanna
kind of a
give
different
anyone else the
perspective, I
impression
wasn't
we're trying to
thinking,
take
but,
something away from them, because that's not our goal. But certainly, I have no problem bringing it into one, it makes it simple for the processing and simple for them for the permitting if it's done through us, but I don't want them to feel like they're losing control in any way if they don't wanna do it. It's just as easy to do that on permit.
Right, and it allows them to put in their own information, so that way it's not like secondhand.
And they're gonna have all the police and fire there for the parade no matter what, because they always go up. Everyone gives out the glow sticks and participates, so.
And we are, I had a thought connected to that. We're still working kind of the same thing kind of like last year, the trunk or treat and other things, is that the concept? Okay.
Right.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, the only difference, or only few things that we have different from last year already planned is that, we're gonna reduce the hours on the trunk or treat by half an hour. Just because based off of experience from last year, a lot of people were trying to clear out of there after about an hour and a half. So we can kind of accommodate, it would help to accommodate people if we ended the event, let them go out and you know, do something else for the last half an hour of trick or
Right, still
treating.
do some trick or treating.
Rather than trying to say, well, you're here till 8 o'clock, so.
I think that some people come and go through,
Right.
and I think if you had 800 last year, you might have 1,200 this year.
Hopefully.
I think it's gonna grow.
Fingers crossed.
I think it's gonna grow quite a bit.
Good.
Yeah, heard a lot of good about it, just down the street, so.
Good.
A lot of good about it. Of course, that means I gotta get more candy bars.
Helping the local economy.
I buy the full-size ones, so you know, a lot of visitors.
Good.
And I might have treats for the adults as well.
Any further comment on that? All right, I'd like to move to the next one, and this would be, I'm gonna go back up to the Common Victualers Haymaker Grill. We got a request for Common Victualler in holder's license. I believe this is at the old Cozy Cabin property on Worcester Road. I think there's, someone recently purchased it, yeah. So, anybody have any thoughts other than it's nice to see another place opening up in the town? And that someone actually thought it was worth coming to our town to invest. So. Do I have a motion to approve it, or are we just still reading more? I'm sorry, I'm not trying
I'll
to.
make a motion, we grant permission for the common victualer's license to Haymaker's Grill, 1067 Worcester Road.
Second the motion.
Call for vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Special town meeting date. I understand that Thanksgiving's a little earlier than I thought, like the 22nd this year, so we usually do it before then. Did you say, I thought I remember talking to you the other day, you had a recommendation for a date.
Tuesday, August 13th, or, November 13th.
November 13th.
I would great, I'd love to go back to August.
So that gives us
6 weeks.
2 months from today, pretty much, 2 months from yesterday. Our first joint meeting between the planning board and the board of selectmen regarding the marijuana bylaws that we discussed the last meeting isn't until October 2nd,
Yes.
which gives us about 5 weeks to finalize a draft, so we have time to say it's actually done and we can all say we're good with this going into the meeting. But that's still pushing it because 5 weeks usually ends up with, at best, 3 meetings.
So do you wanna shoot for early December instead?
Or late November.
We have solar panels too, right? Yep.
There it is, okay.
I think with late November is that you're like coming right off of Thanksgiving, so it's like almost
So early
close
December.
enough, yeah.
The 27th would be the Tuesday after Thanksgiving weekend. The 20th would be the Tuesday before. I don't know if anybody in this room thinks a before or after is better, or if it's still all too close to a holiday like Thanksgiving. It's easier to make it to a meeting, I'm guessing, after, because everybody's racing back from family events and eating too much, but
It's better that if you move it, the special, later, to make sure you've got all the info you need for it, rather than having to think about another special in the spring, you know?
yeah.
Even if you have to go into December.
Could even do the.
Beginning of December wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, the 4th or 11th, cause then you're not getting too close to Christmas. And you really need to kinda have it this calendar year so that we can have regulations in place for the meeting beforehand.
My concern to go that late, now we get into the risk of snow being an issue and ice being an issue for the night.
I like December 4th.
I
You
do
almost
too.
never get enough accumulated snow by then that you can't just,
A little,
Deal with it
little
simply
less risky
enough.
for weather, it still gives us almost a month, 3 weeks more than November date.
but I do think we need to get a couple more weeks in between now and then.
I agree.
Will we have the free cash certified by then? That's, I think, one of the things probably Claire was thinking of.
We'd love to.
What?
I'm trying to push that, I mean, we're ready to close, so we'll see. Can't make any guarantees though.
Yeah. But what was the date we decided on?
December 4th.
December 4th.
And right now, we don't have any, there's really only one big capital item that we're looking to bring forward to the special town meeting. It doesn't involve a free cash appropriation.
Right.
So we might be, irregardless, we might be okay. I think there might only be a few small items for request that could be taken from either funding source stabilization.
I'll make a motion.
I also just wanted to bring that, to think about it, and of course, Finance Committee will have to think about it. But we did get the notice that our treasurer, Nancy, is leaving. Because the assistant collector is also just starting after the last one left, I think Jess left about a month ago, month and a half.
About 3 weeks.
All right.
28.
It may be worth, first of all, I don't even know if Nancy would consider this, but I do think, one, we know most departments end up with difficulties with their budget when they have personnel loss. So now might not be a bad time to consider how much we might want to add to that specific budget to get through the rest of the fiscal year. And I'm also suggesting we might want to look at the possibility of having Nancy stick around a little bit for an overlap to make sure to help pass on any institutional knowledge she may have gathered, because she's been doing a lot for this town to try to work through some books she inherited that were hard to track, and which probably means she's got a lot in her head that she knows where to look that might be harder to find in the papers and in the books. And I do think it's not often, and most municipalities don't do it, but I also think a lot of them hurt for not doing it, is setting up that transitional period where you have the old and the new kind of there at the same time for a little while.
When is Nancy done?
October 14th, I think, was her resignation date. If not, it's pretty close to one of those teens. So it might be beneficial, so we would still have to talk to Nancy, see if it's something she'd even be willing to do.
I talked to her, she just wanted to stay on a part-time basis through, to get us through that transition period, but I think it's important that we, do establish somebody into the position, so that way it's not a matter of just kind of trailing her along and saying that.
Oh, right, I agree. We gotta get someone hired, but
Yeah.
what I'm hoping is that the two of them could be there for a little while, which would affect the budget, so we'd have to look at what that budget would be. I don't think, again, it's not a drastic budget change, but based on the stance we took last year and we're starting to kind of push now, is this is the time we need to look at departments that may have issues with their budget, and try to catch it now so that until May, that's their budget, and they gotta balance it, work it, make it work, and if they can't, then they've gotta figure out how to button it up and make it work. That's about it, because until May, we're not, I think, based on modern municipal Modernization Act, we're no longer allowed to even get town approval or Board of Selectmen approval and Finance Committee approval until May
I think it's still
for
something that's under
transfers
review.
and things or
Yeah.
something. So now is when we would have to do it. So special town meeting is the time to say, do we see something in the future that was unforeseen when we approved the budget in June? One of the things was the transition in the whole treasurer's office. I do think it was worth looking at the potential of investing a little bit more money to get a better pass on of the information. My position, just putting it out there, I'm not saying that everybody should agree with me.
Who you have coming in too, you know.
Right, it also depends on the state of the books, exactly, how easy is it to read the books versus how easy is it to read the books because you've already read them for 5 years or whatever Nancy's been here.
Right. We can allow enough money to say that she stays on and overlaps part-time for a month if we have to. It doesn't mean she'll need that. Might mean a week or two, and the money can be unspent, it goes to free cash next year. So it won't hurt us to budget a little extra, but that would be maybe talk to Nancy and see how long she thinks she might need worst scenario. Budget for worst scenario, be optimistic we get some of this up to speed quickly, and we don't spend it. But still, if we're talking a part-time salary, we're not talking an exorbitant amount of money.
Right.
I was going to say, I'll make a motion that we set our town meeting date for special town meeting of December 4th.
Second.
Call for a vote.
Aye?
Right.
Aye.
Now we gotta open the warrant.
Question,
Yes.
are you required to have an audit when you have one treasurer leave and another one coming on?
I don't think it's a, I don't think it's a state requirement.
We should just check though.
But,
Just wondering that, I can't remember if we did before or not. But
Sometimes
seems
it helps
logical.
also as a third party, here's the dividing line of what anybody would say between the records pre and
Yeah.
post of who's
that
accounting
could-
for what.
I mean, that could be your own, I mean, that could be your policy.
Yeah. Which means we may wanna know what that cost would be if it's something that we didn't budget for the same type of audit. We may wanna throw that in for the same reason into this special town meeting, so. And we can choose, in that regard, whichever auditor we want to use, because we may want to use a different auditor.
Warrant dates.
Yes,
Need to work backwards, and when do we need to close it? How long do we wanna leave it open?
we wanna,
Because right now, we're looking at 2.5 months, 10 weeks.
I think the last one you guys had it open 2 weeks, so you said like October 4th at 4 o'clock, or closing, opening it now. Gives you another meeting.
Do you wanna open it now, or do you wanna open it later?
I say do it now, and get it
I think
started.
If you open it now, you'll have another meeting before the closure, so that way you can bring anything forward. Before then, we close it, your next meeting isn't until October 15th, when you guys get a draft.
but you were talking about closing it when?
October 4th, 2 weeks from next Thursday.
But then we wouldn't have a meeting until the 15th?
Right.
So the meeting in between would just be discussing things we might wanna add to the warrant,
Let's,
because the warrant will still be open through.
Right.
And we can
Alright.
open and close and add when we want anyways, as we know, but, it gives a finite time for people to propose their own articles. Do we want to give a little more time and go another week, or do we want
I kinda like for
You like
special
keep it
town
for
meeting,
two?
just giving it the 2 week.
to? Okay.
So warrant, now, we need to be realistic on when we're closing it on October 4th, so I would suggest we actually close it by 4 o'clock? Do you want 3 o'clock?
Yeah, so we've said 5 before.
Because I mean, we're still giving them 13 other days to get it in, it's not like we're giving them a 24-hour notice.
Right.
Yes, Claire?
Isn't there a days that you can open a warrant before a special? There are different rules for special.
Requirement a number of days prior to a meeting
Yeah.
of when you open the warrant or when
Yeah.
you close it?
When you open it.
Maximum or minimum?
I think there is a minimum number of days,
It
Seems
is,
like
it's
I
not very
remember
long.
but
a number of days. when
that
it
would
is.
be no more than 60 days.
Thank you
Good
very
night.
much.
Have a good night, Sam.
And since October 4th and December 4th are just over the 60-day, I think it would work.
30 days has been ringing a bell.
So I think it's a minimum though, not a maximum. So if we do it now, we don't have to do it again within 30 days of the meeting, I think. That's how I remember it.
I'm not sure.
Outside of that, it might be like if it goes longer than 6 months, then you've gotta kinda do it and refresh it again, cause
Yeah.
people don't, very similar to the, when we send something to the planning board, if we don't act within such a time, then we gotta do it again.
Yeah, I'm just thinking the amount of chronologically, we've gotta close the warrant, get the articles together, review them from both boards and then by the time we get through that stage, then we're probably about 30 days out from the
Yeah,
actual
'cause
meeting.
it has to be posted,
Mhm.
how many days before the special?
14?
14.
Yeah.
So it's 14
Yeah.
before a special?
Yeah.
It's the same, or is it different from a special number?
I think the posting's the same, but
I thought they were different.
we can check these things with Ellen. By we, of course, I mean Andrew can check
Yeah.
things with Ellen.
I'll double check it.
Yeah.
And if we have to
Yeah.
change it, we will. In the meantime, we'll make a motion that we open the warrant tonight at 9 PM on the 17th of September 2018. This warrant will close on the 4th day of October at 3 PM. On
Second.
October 4th, 2018.
Call for vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And so again, so if we do that, we have to, the warrants posted the 14 calendar days, right? Okay, just wanna. So the Tuesday prior to Thanksgiving, we have to have them posted. Which gives us a good 5 weeks
Yeah, you'll have 3 meetings.
to continue to work our internal review of drafts and bylaws and financing. Because the warrant really just posts the title, not necessarily the funds included, or does it include the funds?
It's just the title. The funds are ancillary.
Presented at the
Yeah,
meeting,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that's what.
You give the recommended amount.
Okay. Alright, so that should be
Open
good.
9/17/2018 at 9, closed 10/4/2018 at 3 PMs.
If anybody's looking to do signature applications to get something on the warrant, do recognize you need more signatures for a special town meeting, so please review that. I think it's a minimum of 200.
100.
100. 200 sounded really big, so I said it. But it's more than your 10 that you need for an annual town meeting.
Don't get exactly.
No, you need 100, then once you turn the 100 signatures in, we would send them down for confirmation, and as long as the 100 are confirmed, the article can be placed in the warrant. So it's advised to get at least, say, 10% more. For whatever reason, illegible, not registered, other reasons that people fall off the list and the signature wouldn't count, so. Please be diligent, make sure you have plenty of ample signatures if you want to put something on.
And in that regard, I just make one more disclaimer. There will be multiple public hearings going on between now and the special town meeting. I don't know the exact number or locations, but we are working on some bylaws where we will have public meetings to get some input. I don't think any of them are gonna be requiring the public hearing per statute. I'm just saying that we're gonna post it specifically requesting for public input on some of the stuff. I am done with that one. Anybody else have anything on the town meeting to discuss? Okay. Investment policies.
You guys had these in the back of your,
Those you sent us in an email a while ago, didn't you? So it looked
Yeah,
awfully
last-
familiar when I
yeah.
started reading, like, I already read all of these.
yeah, so Nancy had, proposed, these two, basically, kinda going through the, with the goal of trying to get our bond rating back. And her recommendation is that, that anybody who's coming in is gonna be looking to see if you have policies in place regarding your investment strategies. So she, asked that I present this to the board for your consideration, review, comment.
When we talk about the investment strategies, are these things that need to be board approved before they're invested, or does this give prior authorization for them to invest in these things?
She has a prior authorization as treasurer to control the investments, but this basically gives it a structure so that way, she's
Guidelines.
taking sound, whoever's in the position is making sound decisions based off the written document.
I'm assuming you read and understand these? I've read and partially understand these. I'm certainly not an investment type of person. But, they seem reasonable. How much do we have invested, how much money-wise do we have invested in different things? When I see things such as, fixed income, domestic bonds,
Thank you
international
much.
bonds. What is the fixed income that we're talking about? We're talking about town income that comes in.
Right, so basically, money that you're guaranteed, so your tax, the tax rate, where you set the tax rate, you're gonna be getting that, a certain percentage of those funds, so it's guaranteed funding.
How much money does a town actually have invested in things? Is this short term, they're gonna use the money as the year goes on? I assume this isn't long-term investment for gain, this is.
I do have our investment portfolio, we have a copy of it in my office. I apologize, I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head, so I don't wanna give you any bad information.
But everything we invest is, we're not investing for long-term gain. We have,
Right.
we have our, our accounts set aside for stabilization fund. Other than that, anything we invest is just as funds come in before they're needed, they're invested in whatever short-term to try to have a gain.
Right.
Don't forget the road materials.
Making sure I understand that properly, because it seems silly if we're investing.
Right now.
All right.
I'll provide you guys a copy of our current portfolio, so you guys can review it and see where our monies are tied up.
Would these be considered like two different chapters in
Yeah.
the policy?
Yep.
One thing I would like on this, and I don't know how to maybe phrase the question, so just kind of throw it out and recognize that what I'm saying is more just some of it due to ignorance, because when you get into this type of level discussion, I recognize it's not I need to go back and call a consultant to know what I'm reading in some of this. Are we able to develop some reporting method based on the structure actually of the policies, so they can kind of reference, you know, say on the investment policy, section C, it says diversification.
Right.
So in other words, if we have develop somewhat of a standard reporting format that can highlight those certain areas, and then in the report, they can explain how they met the policy and what certain investments met this section, this met that one. So it's almost like as, say even an auditor, you go through the policy and you read the report, and then you validate the information in the report, and you're saying, okay, that is consistent with the policy, and it's easy to read.
Right. We should have something together like that from our financial advisor, Bartholomew.
Okay.
So, let me look, I will see what we have. Let me just take that, go kind of back and forth with this, just to see whether or not that does fit within the policy. I'm sure it does. I think she got a lot of input from them on this, on the development of this. So, when we confirm that, I can bring it back to you guys for consideration.
All right, because that would be good information also to make sure we include in town reports and things like that, to make it easy for someone to read, so they don't feel like they actually have to go back to their own accounting consultant to explain, what's my town doing?
I'm assuming the OPEB would be a long-term investment account.
Right, yeah. That's, we
Are
understand that
they
we're.
low risk, I would assume, we're not looking for that.
Yeah, unless you're like a Wellfleet or something like that, a lot of towns are struggling with trying to fund that liability, so it's kind of like yeah, this is what we'd like to do, but as long as we're contributing something to it, then we're still in good shape. So, that's why someone's like, yeah, you know, to be fully vested in 10 years, we'll be starting at 25,000, growing more and more and more every year. But right now, we're able to afford the 10,000. As long as we're putting it in there, we're safe. So
Yeah,
that's what a lot of towns is.
We're putting something to the future we hadn't been doing before, so it's just it's a good start.
Just would be careful when we do invest that long-term, that it's something, you know, with a mild return and very safe.
Yep.
Safety committee, the only reason I'm bringing that up again is it's a little bit broader than just one real quick wage authorization slash, so I'm just trying to hit things that other people might want to comment on. One thing I was wondering, and I'm okay with how it's presented up, so this really is more of a wondering question, and I think you even mentioned either in your last mention of it or in your email. I'm wondering if this is better to write into the policy, because we are identifying all the members are department, municipal employees primarily. So if we could just roll that into, I don't think it's not a personnel policy, it's a administration policy. So I think that's something we could just write in, but
Right in that.
that would then also depend on if the individuals we think should be there will volunteer, or if we have to identify as, nope, if you can't get someone else, then you, the department head, is now the designated member of. But I like it, I just think it might even be better to be just as part of the policy, it's just standard, we're gonna have to do this, so each department head, you or a representative that can do the job right will sit in and fill this role.
Yeah, I guess, one of the things that I wanted to try to accomplish in it was to make sure that we have some representative from our two bargaining units, because, for one, when this committee kind of gets going and starts developing policies, it's inevitable that within those two bargaining units, there's gotta be changes recommended that's going to affect their operations. So we don't want it to seem like it's management down saying you have to do this and risk any sort of grievance. We'd like to have the employees be contributing to this. So it's almost like, should it be
Self-governing.
yeah, it should be almost self-governing where it says, hey, we all put some time and effort into this, we understand that there's risks involved, and we think that you should be part of the team rather than hey, boss is saying that we have to do this because it's safer. But they might construe it to say, well, it's a change of working conditions that they didn't bargain. So.
I gotcha. It's also possible what we do here is this employee safety committee develops the policy for the Board of Selectmen to then review and approve. That way we don't have to get into the nitty-gritty, working out the details. And then so in other words, we keep it as a charge for now. I would generally agree with what you were saying about getting the right diversification of the workplace, whether it's public safety, administration, represented, non-represented. To me, that makes sense.
The only other concern I see right now is, I'd like to see some sort of meeting schedule requirements. They're gonna meet once a month or 4 times a year, or
Right.
some sort of schedule and time and date that they'll meet. If you put that as rigid in here, will help structure it for people who want to put their time to it. And let them know what's expected of them, because as it is, they could try to meet every week or nothing could happen at all.
And then, of course, we just revise the description a little bit to speak about developing the policy, not managing necessarily the town's municipal OSHA program. Because I'm guessing the policy should also include some level of identifying a proper training schedule, recurring training, because I know when we're all in the private life working, that's what corporate does now. Doesn't matter who you are, you're doing training, and today it's gonna be close your file drawer, somebody kicks it with their shin, and now it's a workers' comp, administrative level training versus.
It's hard to, the way it is now where it's like, I might get a training opportunity that comes in from our insurance company, I'll forward it off to a department head, and that, I'm not sure whether or not that gets followed up on, or if they're scheduling that training. I'd like it to be a committee that looks at it and goes, this is a worthwhile training, we think that it's worth your time to go and take a 4-day course, relative to this, and just kind of have that backing of an established committee to say that, yeah, we see value added in it, we think that you should go.
I gotcha. I also thought I read, and maybe that was in the email you sent us or a link, that I think the state was developing or holding links to free training materials, so you can kind of have the monthly, okay, bloodborne pathogens this month, hazardous materials this month, slips and fall, that standard, just remind you every year, you just keep going, yep, okay, don't fall.
The insurance company's pretty good about providing a lot of that stuff, at least through the materials that they give us. I think the Department of Labor is gonna be more involved in it now that they have these OSHA regulations that have expanded out to all municipal employees. But what they did provide on their website now are basically the draft policies that say, this is what your bloodborne pathogen policy will be, and they give you the opportunity to just basically take out town and put in town Barry.
Gotcha.
But it doesn't mean it's gonna necessarily conform to everything that we do. I mean, there's a lot of things that identifies to say, yeah, this is a policy you need to have, but, this could apply to 200 communities, doesn't mean it applies to you, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And exactly, and obviously, we're gonna have certain departments that might have strengths in that might actually have personnel that would be helpful to guided training, not necessarily any certified type, if you know what I mean. They're not buying that type of training from someone, but if someone has the knowledge, you can say, a paramedic might be able to put in an hour or so to tell a group of everybody that's not in their industry, so all the administrative people, teach them about bloodborne pathogens. paramedic should easily be able to tell you what to and what not to touch and how to protect yourself in that situation. But then you may have somebody that might be from your office or something that might be more familiar with ergonomics and furniture, and that's a good administrative way to go back to others and say, hey, this is why you would do that. But
All good
I'm
things
fine
the committee
open
should
with
do.
it, but let the committee develop it, kinda like
Exactly.
the side conversations before on the other charges. So yeah, I do like the idea, and please continue with that.
We'll get that going. So.
Yep, sounds good, and, what I'll do is I'll tweak it and I'll send it over to the unions, their representation too, so that way they have some idea that this is something that we're looking into and that we want them to be part of.
Perfect.
Because it's for their own well-being.
The state said.
And the state said we have to.
Yeah.
So, road materials, DPW, big purchasing something or another stuff.
By 19 road materials and maintenance.
Do you have printed out as a list of the requests of who we plan
I
to use?
do, well, I actually,
I see all the
Yeah.
numbers here, but
Mhm.
the numbers without Jason's input are deceiving. 'Cause
I have
when I look at a cost here, a cost delivered, sometimes he's like, yes, we always pick that up, or other
Yeah.
times, no, we only deliver it, so
so I
we
have.
need to know which is irrelevant.
Yeah, he sent me over the list today, so I went through and I circled his requests on my sheet, so I can at least give those to you. So, items, 1, 2, 3, and 4, he's recommending that RJ McDonald be awarded all 4 of those. Item number 5.
Oh,
So we want a company for that, so.
Yep. So item number 5, seal coating. Item number 6 would be all-state asphalt for full depth reclamation. Items.
5 was seal coating, 6 was who?
All-state.
Thank you.
Yep. Items 7, 8, and 9 all to be awarded to Palmer Paving. And then item 10 to be awarded to all 3 contractors. Basically that all states be awarded the vibratory, all states be awarded the chip spreader, but not the vibratory roller. That one being awarded to RJ McDonald. And the hydraulic excavator to be awarded to Salvador rather than RJ McDonald.
Why did we go
How
with,
about the triaxle?
RJ.
RJ.
Yeah.
how did we go with Palmer Paving on the milling per square yard? They're the highest bidder of the 3? Item 7?
Because they're in town, so the delivery cost is, so it's picked up at the yard, so they would,
Our hauling
yeah, it's
cost
right,
is less.
it's.
Alright,
the
so these
cost-
costs
the cost
aren't
less.
reflecting the cost per yard because the cost per yard includes the delivery charge. So this isn't
They're-
actually showing the whole cost.
It doesn't show the.
They're all those are all at plant, so that's what I'm saying, when it comes to at plant,
Yeah.
these are only at plant, and he knows what it costs to go get it between labor and equipment and fuel. And that's why it's,
Okay.
for the price, a couple pennies or a quarter, it's a lot cheaper to keep the truck here in town than to send it 80 miles round trip or 40 miles round trip or something, with the paid, employee for an hour or 2 as well.
Okay.
That's why I was asking for his input to it, because if we just look at strictly by the numbers, it's not gonna work. You have to know what's coming from where and why.
What is Palmer Paving set up here? Is that the one down off
Right,
of,
yeah, right next to Felton Field.
yeah, okay. Right off of Valley Road, right there, okay. They don't advertise it well, like here's Palmer Paving, it's just an entrance. Because everybody knows that's who it is. I've been guessing for a long time now. I was like, that must be them, but I'm not sure. I thought it was just some local business that we always use, I don't know.
They actually recently took over, maybe about 2 years ago.
Okay.
I think they purchased,
Okay,
Okay.
anyway.
thank you.
I'm gonna make a semi-comprehensive motion for the first 9, be 3 separate ones, so. I'm gonna make a motion that we award wash and screen sand per ton, screen sand per ton, crushed stone per ton, and bank and process gravel per ton to R.J. McDonald.
Second.
Call for vote.
Aye.
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 I make a motion that we award the fiber or rubber crack filling per gallon to Seal Coating Incorporated.
Second.
Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion that we award the full depth reclamation per square yard to Allstate Asphalt.
Second. Call for vote.
Yep.
Aye.
I make a motion that we award milling per square yard, type 1 bituminous concrete per ton, and cold patch per ton at plant, all to Palmer Paving.
Second.
Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
As far as item 10, as follows, I make a motion to award the chip spreader rental per hour to Allstate.
Second.
Call for vote.
Aye.
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 I make a motion, we award the hydraulic excavator with operator to R.J. Salvador.
RD.
R.D., thank you.
I second that with an RD.
R.D. Salvador.
Mm-hmm.
I'll call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion that we award the equipment rental per hour for vibratory roller with operator, 10-wheel dump truck with operator, tri-axle dump truck with operator, trailer dump with operator, bulldozer with operator, crusher with operator, loader, rubber tire 3-yard with operator, backhoe rubber tire with operator, and model and bucket size link belt, all to R.J. McDonald.
Second.
Second. Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
I got it right? I hope so, because it's done.
Aye.
I'm assuming you yell a bit.
Yeah. We made it right on the page.
Discharge of mortgage, 19 West Street, Fairone. This is back to the old
The old CDBG
cleanup ones,
funding. Yep,
CDBG ones.
yep. So this one, they actually provide us a check of $54,000 in order to clear
Yeah,
the
right
mortgage
there.
on this. They sold the property, provided us a check is cleared, so we're requesting that you guys sign up on the discharge of the mortgage.
Oh, so this is actually paid in full, not requesting to release the debt.
Correct.
Make a motion, we discharge a mortgage for 19 West Street.
Second.
As it is paid.
Call for vote.
Aye.
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 Nice change of events.
We did with the funding on this is since it wasn't town funds that were appropriated, they wouldn't actually I guess this was actually part of the way,
Just the only one we got?
yeah, a water, the water improvement project at the time, or the water line improvement project. So there was a account set up as a special revenue account. This actually goes back to that special revenue account, but since we're not issuing any more mortgages based off of that, it can basically be used as a capital improvement, almost stabilization account.
Okay.
So if there's any projects that you guys foresee that might be a one-time hit, you might want to identify that specific funding source to use.
And you're saying pretty much we could use it towards any capital, you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Say a fire engine,
Sure.
first year payment.
Continue to work towards kind of rebuilding Main Street, Southbury Road, that neighborhood. We talked about getting sidewalks done. We had talked even potentially either a MassWorks or CDBG to help with the infrastructure
Yeah,
upgrades.
so I did submit a MassWorks grant application for $1.5 million, so we'll see how it plays out. the competitive grants, I tried to hit every buzzword check box on the application forms, so, that was for the, Southbury, water line improvements and infrastructure improvements, so we'll see what happens.
Okay. All right. Another one we might throw in there someday would be a MassWorks thing about possibly helping fund distribution of fiber optic network.
Yes.
Because they're all about that economic benefit to us.
And let's really start getting on the state, because they have appropriated money to try to improve that. They've given a lot of money out to the Berkshires for this, for the last mile to improve the fiber, and I guess they had about 11 towns actually partner with the city of Westfield, who provides a municipal, fiber optic network. So, I don't know if there's already a local in place, or a local city or in place that does that might.
Peter Sam was distributing their own system, I thought, and I thought that was fiber optic.
You talked to them about
Because
what-
they had mentioned something of a year, maybe,
About a year ago.
actually it might have been before you got hired.
Mhm.
They were bringing it up
Mm-hmm.
and wondering if people in North and Northwest Barry might be interested in patching into their system. And at the time, I think we were trying to figure out how to just upgrade the whole system, and we were trying to push buttons with Spectrum to see what they could do. Either way, we gotta figure out how to get internet to every house that can be based on landlines of some sort. But I would prefer to see if we can get it to a fiber optic, or a minimum, some fiber optic backbones running up and down some of our main roads we can tack off of
Right.
at smaller cost here and there.
I mean, we do have, it's gotta be available, we have 2 fiber optic lines that come into this building, so.
Yeah.
The ability's gotta be there, I think it's just gonna be a matter of coordinating with the state.
Well, we may also be able to look into getting vendor costs for private install of the line. Find a company that might give us a rate that if they have downtown or Middletown, they can run the line for us, and then we're still able to tie into it as service provider.
Speak to Princeton, because I know that they desperately needed something for the longest time. And they finally had closed the loop on some agreements with Charter, whoever, to finally get cable to every house or neighborhood. I'll leave it at that. I don't know if it's every house. But they also did it because they were able to have an agreement where they funded some of the work. Like you're saying, if we can just have somebody run the wire down the poles, and then a company comes up and then they finish the terminations and check the,
Right.
whatever they're willing to take on for
If we're
maintenance
able to
moving
get it out
on.
the roads at a reasonable cost to the town, then the homeowners have the option to tie in, and they just gotta pay Charter to go from the pole to the house and tie them in, which is normal. That's a normal quick couple-hour install for it, but we may.
I
have
just
to
figured
get
I'd
the
mention
cost.
Princeton, cause I know it was something recent, and somebody I know that lives there mentioned that it wouldn't hurt talking to them, because they went through some bumps and bruises in figuring this out, and they might save us from falling into a loophole they
Yeah,
may
see
have
what
fallen
the
in.
bid process was, to look for contractors for it, or if they
So,
came up with a way to hire direct for that.
so,
I don't know, we need
There you
to
go.
establish a municipal light plant, do one ourselves, we'll see. It's all
Yeah.
stuff to consider.
Us, I know, once again, well, Groton, they have their own Groton Light Department, and, when you start losing poles, that's a pain in the tush, because you do it with your own one truck you have in town.
Yep,
But,
okay.
towns do it.
yep, we'll look into it.
Alright, so we're at,
Wage authorizations to the library.
yes,
Is this, I'm trying to understand what this is this 2 people trading positions? Because one seems to be, the
Yeah.
youth is going to a library youth,
Right.
where it was just a youth.
Right, so what basically happened is, back in March 30th, Kaylee Hart was appointed to the position of youth services librarian. Over the summer, she got a position working for the schools. So she's no longer able to work the allotted amount of hours that are appropriated for the position. But agreed that she would be able to step back to a library assistant role, because she's still under her probationary period, could go back down to, under what our policy is, she's able to step back to the same position she would have been. We did an internal advertisement for the youth services library. We had an internal candidate that Stephanie feels would be a very good fit for the position. So it's basically a one-for-one swap. That we have one person that's moving up from a library assistant to a youth services library, and one person moving down from youth services library and back to as a library assistant.
And we're just losing 52 cents an hour on the deal.
Right.
A whole 10 hours, that's a whole $5 a week.
That says
That's not-
greater than 10 hours a week.
That was a keystroke mistake.
Gotcha, okay.
I'll make a motion, let's just do one, to appoint Kaylee Hart as the library assistant, class 1, step 2 for $12.18 an hour.
Second.
Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Now I'll make a motion that we appoint approve Julia Palmer as the youth services librarian, class 2, at $15.54 an hour.
I'll second.
Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye. I get confused back here. Why?
The part-time or full, the full-time part.
Why is Kaylee going back to a step 2 when she was only a step 1 in the other position?
Her years of service tripped her to become a step 2 in her, while she was working in the position of the library, or the youth services coordinator.
So her total tenure as an employee at the library
As a-
would have put her into a step 2 had she still been in the position that she was in.
Correct.
But she wasn't.
And she was working at
She was in a
higher
different position, at a higher position.
Right.
So when you bring her down. Alright.
Rather than bring her down, well, now that you're put in this position, now you gotta work another.
And that stays
2
open
years.
for her for how long? Is it 1 year? Where you can return back to a position previously like that without starting at the
Yes.
bottom?
So that's, yeah, during your probationary period, so if you've been identified to say, hey, typically it's, you kinda get evaluated, and if the position isn't working out, you kinda say, we're gonna allow you to step back into your previous position without any harm or foul, but in this case, it was just a matter of the hours worked better, so,
Okay.
without losing an employee, we can still retain it.
Alright. Okay, so that's both of those. Did I miss anything on the agenda? I think I got it all covered outside of correspondence and selectmen reports, et
I
cetera.
had them all crossed off. I think we got them all.
Do either of you selectmen have anything you would like to report on this time, based on anything you've been working or thinking about?
I do not.
No, I think we covered everything in this meeting.
So, anything specific on your town administrator's report outside of what's already been published?
No,
Oh, yes.
well,
I'm looking at your report, it looks like we haven't covered green communities.
No, I mean, he published it though,
Oh,
it's publicly,
yeah, yeah.
that's what I meant.
Oh,
yeah.
I thought it meant we had no.
But
it's on the town website.
I don't
it's on-
mind if you
Yeah.
felt the need to say anything else, otherwise we can just,
Public information, Wednesday, October 24th, we're gonna have a real kickoff meeting for public input on that economic development plan, that's been in the works. And we're kind of using that as a springboard to gain interest in people serving on the, economic development committee. So we're looking to kind of roll all that stuff in one, so trying to get as many people involved in that. Todd Miller is working on recruitment of people to get them to the meeting and get them involved in the economic development committee itself, so see how it pans out. Hopefully you guys can make it on 24. So.
Exactly.
Green communities, the DPW dug the trench and poured the pad today for the new charging station right out here, so.
okay, that's what that was?
Yep,
Okay.
so that should be done, we're gonna be completing it on the day that we needed to get it done for the Nest EVI grant. So that way they cover 20% of the cost of the
Oh,
state.
okay.
So that's happening right in time. And it would be nice because with the regional building inspector's vehicle being an electric vehicle, the only other place she could charge up is Beck and Hardwick, but now she can actually park here
Okay.
and charge up.
Yep.
The rest of the stuff's basically internal stuff for you guys, so.
Okay. One question I do have is when you do the Green Communities grant applications, how do you develop what you believe is the next best thing to apply for?
So typically what I do is I sit down with CMRPC, who kind of writes the grant on our behalf, and ask if there's any opportunities out there, whether or not they've heard of the green communities kind of targeting one thing or another, if they're kind of giving bonus points for specific things, or if they gave bonus points in previous years for things, or anticipating taking away certain incentives. Kind of develop a plan of action, and then we'll talk with Energy Conservation Inc., who's basically a certified vendor under the state that you don't have to procure, or you don't have to do a procurement for. And they'll tell you.
Up to $100,000 per facility per year?
Right.
Okay,
right.
yeah.
So they kind of audit to say, well, this is what the payback would be over certain years, because I believe that the max is like a payback over, there's a certain percentage, like you need to get a certain percentage payback over 7 years, I believe, of the investment, because we looked at replacing the boiler for this building, but the return on investment was like a 50-year ROI. So they're like, yeah, the Green Communities grant won't pay for that. If we can, come up with a list of 3 good projects that we think we have a comparative shot for, that's what we put in for. And what we're looking at doing now is we're kind of running out of projects that are grant eligible. There's a few things that we can kind of go for, but we look to try to get Ruggles Lane School as part of our baseline assessment and try to get grant funding to do improvements over there as well.
Because that's one of the things I was wondering with the schools,
Mm-hmm.
and I still don't know where the high school's at with this, but if they don't make the move to LED, the incentives are gonna drastically start dropping because they're becoming the new available on the shelf. And once it's available on the shelf regularly and you can't find the fluorescents and stuff, there's no more incentive to go to LED. National Grid will not give you an incentive if it's your only option.
Right. And what we have to do is, I've talked with CMRPC about this, is we actually have to update our baseline assessment, because when we first went into the Green Communities program, it was without the school. So they look at it as far as what your objective is, and I think that they look to try to get you to reduce your energy output by 25% over the
10-year period or
over a
something.
10-year period that you're in the program. That we've achieved that goal. So now they allow you to kind of expand out to try to get other things. And so we're gonna look at trying to get the school on board, but that goes to trying to get all their previous history of electrical usage and putting that into our database and then saying, all right, now by investing in you guys, it's gonna bring our baseline down this much. We just don't wanna open it up too soon and go, well, there's other projects the town has to get accomplished, and now we're gonna start giving money to the school, so we wanna make sure we're on the same page with it.
All right, well, thank you. I guess we are at the point where we would be, we only have one item left. It's an executive session agenda item. So we will be going into executive session, and when we adjourn from executive session, we'll only be going into open session just to adjourn from that as well. So no further business outside of the executive session agenda item will be held tonight. So we should make an official motion on that declaration.
Make a motion, we go to executive session as per Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, Exemption 2, to discuss strategy with respect to the chief. We will only return from there to adjourn.
Second.
Call for vote.
O'Sullivan, yes?
Matt Urban, yes.
Yes.